The light is no longer something far away. You reach the door, and perhaps the old self whispers, "You do not belong here. Do not argue. Insert the key." Perhaps it whispers, "What if it does not turn? Do not argue. Turn it gently." Perhaps it says, "You have no evidence this is yours." But you are no longer conducting a trial. You are entering an imaginal state. The lock moves. The door gives. Warm air touches the face, and you enter. Do not ask what every room looks like. Do not begin furnishing the whole house. Do not turn this simple movement into another difficult exercise. Just notice one fact. The street is now behind you. That is enough. The street is behind you. The position of longing is behind you for this moment. The windows through which you once looked are now windows through which you may look outward. This change is everything. Before, the light was something you wanted. Now you stand where the light is. Before, the house represented a future. Now it represents an inward state. Before, you were a spectator. Now you are the occupant. And an occupant sees the street differently from someone standing upon it. Look through the glass from inside. The road is still there. Nothing happened to the road. The rain may still be falling. Nothing happened to the rain. The distance exists outside, but no longer inside. This is the secret movement I want you to understand. Living from fulfillment does not always remove the road. It removes the road from your identity. Tomorrow may contain steps. Take them. Tomorrow may contain practical decisions. Make them. Tomorrow may contain something unexpected. Meet it. But do not walk back into the street psychologically, simply because a step remains physically. You belong to the state before every bridge is visible. Perhaps you have been standing outside love. Come in, not into control of another human being, into belonging. Perhaps you have been standing outside abundance. Come in, not into foolish spending or denial of numbers, into the state of one who is not inwardly abandoned by supply. Perhaps you have been standing outside success. Come in, not into pretending to possess achievements that do not yet exist. Into capability, dignity, usefulness, expectation. Perhaps you have been standing outside peace. Come in, not into denial of difficulty, into a place within that does not require difficulty to become identity. The house is not one particular external object. The house is the state. External things may symbolize it, but the state is where you live. This distinction will free you from begging one form to become your only doorway. You may prefer a particular form. That is perfectly natural. But do not make one person the owner of love. Do not make one sum the owner of security. Do not make one position the owner of worth. Do not make one event the owner of freedom. The state is larger than the symbol. Enter the state. Let life discover its forms. And tonight, you need not discover how. The mind will ask, how will the house appear physically? How will the relationship change? How will the opportunity arrive? How will the money come? How will the path open? Not tonight. Tonight you are learning residence. A person who has just entered home after a long journey does not immediately run outside to inspect every road that led there. They close the door. They breathe. Perhaps they remove the coat. Do that inwardly. You have worn a heavy coat of waiting. It has become part of your posture. You may not have noticed its weight because you wore it every day. On one shoulder, the question, when? On the other, the question, how? Across the back, the memory of what failed before. In the pockets, old evidence, conversations, numbers, disappointments, predictions. Tonight, remove the coat. Not destroy it, not fight it. Simply recognize that you do not need to sleep in it. Place it near the door. You may see it tomorrow if you wish. For now, let the shoulders feel what it is like not to carry all the evidence of absence into sleep. Perhaps the body responds before the mind believes. A little more space in the chest, a little less pressure behind the eyes, a jaw that no longer has to explain, hands that no longer need to knock. This is enough. You do not need to feel transformed. You need only notice that there is another way to occupy this moment. Many people believe that to live as though the wish were fulfilled, they must become permanently ecstatic. But think of the house again. Would you be ecstatic every night simply because you live there? Perhaps on the first night, perhaps for a while. Then the extraordinary becomes familiar. You place a book upon the table. You know where the lamp is. You walk through the room in darkness without fear because you know its shape. This is the feeling I value. Familiarity. The wish fulfilled, becoming less like a miracle you stare at, and more like a home whose rooms you know. That is why you may fall asleep tonight without great emotion, and still move deeply inward. Perhaps the most truthful sign of entry is not excitement, but the reduction of longing. You no longer need to press your face against the glass. You no longer need to ask whether someone inside has noticed you. You no longer need to imagine how wonderful entry might be. You are inside. Perhaps only in imagination. But imagination is where identity can be rehearsed before the senses agree. And you need not force the senses to agree tonight. Leave them alone. The eyes can close. The ears may continue hearing my voice for a while. The body may grow heavier. The reasoning mind may lose portions of what I say. Let it. You are not required to remember every sentence. If you remember only the house and the key, that will be enough. If you remember only one question, let it be this. How long have you been looking at a life you could already begin occupying within? Perhaps long enough. Long enough to know every brick from the outside. Long enough to know the ache of waiting. Long enough to recognize that more longing will not create the feeling of residence. So turn away from the street. Let the door close behind you. No dramatic sound, just a gentle click. Outside, circumstances may continue arranging themselves according to their own visible sequence. Inside, you are learning another position. Perhaps you sit near the window. Now you look at the same road you once stood upon. See how differently it appears. The place from which you once begged for entry is simply a road now. The rain is simply rain. The darkness is simply night. Nothing outside has to become an enemy. You are no longer asking it to decide where you live. This is what I would have you carry into sleep. Not a desperate claim, not a performance, not the strain of someone trying to force the future into the present. A quieter recognition. I do not have to stand outside. Let that become enough. I do not have to stand outside love. I do not have to stand outside support. I do not have to stand outside dignity. I do not have to stand outside peace. I do not have to stand outside my own imaginal life, waiting for the visible world to issue permission. I may enter inwardly, tonight, softly, without denying anything, without forcing anything, without proving anything. And perhaps the mind will say, but what if I wake tomorrow and feel the old way? Then you remember the key. That is all. You do not punish yourself for finding yourself in the street again. You cross it. You enter. States become natural through return. The old position became familiar because you returned to it thousands of times. You may become familiar with another position in exactly the same gentle manner. Return. Again and again. Not anxiously. As one returns home. You do not condemn yourself because you left the house during the day. You simply come back. So if tomorrow brings an old reaction, recognize it. I have stepped outside. Then inwardly turn. Where is the key? Where is the door? What would this moment feel like from within the state rather than from the street? Perhaps nothing visible changes immediately. That is not the first concern. The concern is who meets what is visible. The old self looks through the window. The new self looks from the window. One word changes. Through. From. And an entire psychological world changes with it. You may have spent years looking through imagination at what you wanted. Now begin looking from imagination as the one who belongs there. From love, observe the silence. From support, observe the number. From capability, observe the task. From peace, observe the uncertainty. The outer fact is no longer the birthplace of identity. Identity becomes the place from which the fact is seen. You will learn this more deeply as the night continues. For now, no more effort. The house is warm. The street grows distant. The key may rest upon the table. You no longer need to hold it tightly once you have entered. That too is important. Do not clutch the method after it has served its purpose. A key is precious at the door. Inside, you place it down. So place these words down as well. You do not need to carry every teaching consciously into sleep. You do not need to keep repeating, I am inside, I am inside, I am inside. That would be another form of standing guard. You entered. Now live there for a little while. Perhaps you hear the faint rain. Perhaps the low fire gives one small sound. Perhaps the lamp is beginning to dim. Nothing requires your attention. No visitor is expected. No letter must arrive before you can rest. No clock needs to be watched. You are not waiting at the window. You are simply in the room. The desired state may become like this, not an object of constant concentration, an atmosphere, a background, a quiet inner residence. Let your breathing become part of that atmosphere. No special breath, no counted breath, the breath that is already here. It enters as though there is room for it. It leaves as though nothing must be held. The body is not asked to reach. The mind is not asked to solve. The heart is not asked to become excited. You are only asked to stop standing outside for a little while. And even that may soon happen without effort. The eyes become heavy. The words become less important. The image of the house may blur. You may forget the street. Good. A person inside does not need to keep remembering the street. Perhaps soon you forget the key. Good. A person at home does not spend the whole night holding the key. Perhaps even the desire itself becomes less distinct. Good. Possession often reduces obsession. Let the desire become quiet enough to sleep beside you without demanding attention. You have wanted it. You have thought about it. You have wondered about it. Tonight, begin discovering what happens when you stop staring at it from a distance. No need to chase. No need to call. No need to stand beneath the window. Come inside. The door is open inwardly. The old road can remain outside. The world may arrange tomorrow in ways you do not yet understand. You are not required to understand them tonight. Tonight, only residence. Only the quiet recognition that you need not sleep as the stranger to your own fulfilled state. You may sleep as one becoming familiar with home. And if one sentence remains as you drift deeper, let it be gentle. I am no longer required to stand outside. Again, more softly. I am no longer required to stand outside. No force, no argument. Only the release of an old position. The house is quiet now. The lamp is low. The street is far away. And perhaps, for the first time in a very long while, you are not looking at the life you desire through a window. You are beginning to look out at the world from within it. And now that you have stepped inwardly from the street into the house, I want you to release another burden. You do not have to stay awake for me. You do not have to hear every sentence. You do not have to remember the order of these ideas. You do not have to hold a picture perfectly in the mind while the body grows tired. You do not have to prove your sincerity by remaining conscious until the final word. If sleep comes before I finish, let it come. Nothing has gone wrong. You are not missing the lesson by falling asleep. You are entering the very condition in which effort becomes unnecessary. There is a habit in many people that turns even a gentle practice into another examination. They hear an idea about imagination and immediately begin watching themselves. Am I doing it correctly? Am I feeling enough? Did the scene become vivid? Was I in the state long enough? Did I lose concentration? Did I accidentally think of the opposite? Will sleep interrupt what I have begun? And before long, something intended to bring release has become another form of vigilance. I would have you abandon that vigilance tonight. You are not a guard posted at the gate of your own mind. You do not need to inspect every thought that passes. You do not need to prevent every doubtful feeling. You do not need to remain awake in order to make certain that the state continues. A state that depends entirely upon strain has not yet become natural. The deeper movement begins when you no longer believe you must supervise it every moment. Think of the house again. Once you enter your own home at night, you do not stand beside the door with your hand still gripping the key. You do not repeat to yourself every few seconds that you have entered. You do not walk from room to room checking whether the walls remain in place. You settle. You permit the house to hold you. And perhaps, after a few minutes, you forget that you were ever standing outside. That forgetting is not failure. It is one of the signs of residence. The person outside thinks constantly about entry. The person inside eventually thinks about something else. So if your desire becomes less distinct as sleep approaches, do not become alarmed. If the image grows faint, let it grow faint. If the words blur, let them blur. If my voice seems near for a moment and far away the next, let it move as it will. You are not required to hold the teaching. Let the teaching become an atmosphere. There is a difference between grasping an idea and allowing an idea to impress itself upon you. The hand that grasps becomes tired. The open hand can rest. Tonight, open the hand. Perhaps you have spent the day holding many things inwardly. A conversation that did not go as you hoped. A number you did not like. A future event you have been trying to predict. A desire you have been attempting to keep alive by thinking about it constantly. A fear that if you stopped concentrating, something important would be lost. Let these things remain where they are for a little while. You do not need to solve them before sleep. The night does not require a final report from you. There is nothing you must complete in consciousness before the body is allowed to rest. This is especially important when you are learning to live from the wish fulfilled. Many hear that phrase and imagine that they must maintain one exact mood continuously. They believe that if they lose the feeling for 5 minutes, the state is gone. If they awaken in fear, the work is undone. If they become distracted, they have fallen from grace. If they sleep without repeating the right words, they have missed their opportunity. But I tell you, naturalness is not maintained by constant inspection. You do not remain yourself by thinking of your identity every second. You do not remain a resident of your town only while remembering its name. You do not remain related to those you love only while consciously thinking about them. Many of the deepest assumptions in life continue beneath attention. They form the background against which attention moves. That is what you are learning. Not how to concentrate forever. How to let another assumption become sufficiently familiar that you no longer need to stare at it. Suppose, before sleep, you briefly feel what it would be like to no longer wait for the desired state. Perhaps the feeling lasts 10 seconds. Then the mind wanders. It remembers something from the day. A sound in the room catches attention. The body shifts. A fragment of an old thought appears. Do not say, "I lost it." You touched the state. You know the direction. If you notice that you have wandered, you may return gently. And if you do not notice because sleep takes you, then sleep has taken you. There is no failure in that. The sleeping body does not need to continue the conscious performance. Indeed, consider how strange it would be if possession required constant mental effort. If you had to remain awake throughout the night to keep your home, you would not call that ownership. If you had to repeat another person's name constantly to preserve a relationship, you would not call that security. If you had to watch your possessions every moment to make sure they remained yours, you would call that fear. So do not bring fear into imagination and call it faith. Faith can close its eyes. Faith can loosen its grip. Faith can allow an impression to be made and then cease interfering. I do not ask you to force yourself into sleep either. That too becomes effort. Do not say, "I must fall asleep now because sleep is important." Do not watch the clock. Do not measure how long it is taking. If the body is awake, let it be awake. If the body begins drifting, let it drift. Your task is not to command unconsciousness. Your task is to cease resisting rest. There is a great difference. One pushes, the other permits. Permission is much closer to the fulfilled state than force. The person who knows they belong somewhere does not force belonging. They permit themselves to inhabit it. The person who knows they are supported does not spend the whole night testing support. They lean into it. So lean now, not only physically, but inwardly. Let the surface beneath you carry more of your weight. Perhaps you have been holding part of the body above the bed through tension you did not notice. The shoulders may still be slightly raised. The jaw may still be preparing a sentence. The forehead may still be trying to see tomorrow. The abdomen may still be listening for danger. Do not command these places to relax. Simply let them know that nothing is required of them for the next few moments. The shoulders do not have to carry the next day. The jaw does not have to finish an argument. The forehead does not have to predict the road. The abdomen does not have to prepare for a future that is not here. The hands do not have to hold the wish. Let the wish be held by the state instead. This may sound subtle, but it is a profound reversal. For so long, you may have believed that if you did not hold the desire tightly, you would lose it. You may have returned to it again and again, not from joy, but from fear that it would disappear. You may have treated imagination as one keeps a small flame alive in a storm, protecting it anxiously with both hands. But the fulfilled state is not such a fragile flame. It does not need fear to protect it. If you return to it tomorrow, good. If you remember it in the middle of the night, good. If you sleep for hours without a single conscious thought of it, also good. The state is not offended by your rest. The desire does not disappear because your attention rests elsewhere. You are allowed to forget the method. This is another thing I want you to understand. Methods are doors. They are not homes. A scene may help you enter. A phrase may help you enter. A feeling may help you enter. A question may help you enter. But once you have entered, you do not have to carry the door upon your back. You may leave the technique outside. Perhaps tonight you form no perfect scene at all. Perhaps you only know, vaguely, that you would like to live without the old pressure. That may be sufficient for this moment. Perhaps instead of imagining a complete event, you feel the difference between reaching and resting. You notice that one requires tension and the other allows support. That distinction alone may teach the deeper mind what you intend. You are not required to create a grand performance before sleep. A small shift in identity can be more faithful than a large display of emotion. You might simply say inwardly, not as a command, but as a recognition, I do not need to stand outside tonight. Then stop. Let silence follow. Do not repeat the sentence because you fear it was not heard. Being does not become deaf because you are quiet. Silence is not the absence of impression. Sometimes silence is where impression settles. Imagine a glass of water that has been stirred. If you continue stirring to make sure it becomes still, it will never become still. You must remove the spoon. The water settles by being left alone. Your mind has been stirred by the day, by decisions, by hopes, by disappointments, by the constant effort to interpret what everything means. Perhaps you have also stirred it with the desire itself. You have repeated it, examined it, checked it, asked how close it is, wondered whether you are doing enough. Tonight, remove the spoon. The mind may continue moving for a while. Let it. Stillness is not produced by attacking movement. It appears when unnecessary disturbance ceases. A thought rises. Let it rise. Another comes. Let it come. A memory moves through. Let it pass. You do not need to transform each thought into something positive before sleep. That would keep you awake, correcting the surface of the water. You are learning something deeper than thought control. You are learning not to identify with every thought that visits. A doubtful thought may appear, and you may remain the one who chose another state. A fearful image may pass, and you may remain the one who knows it is only an old movement. An old phrase may sound in the mind, and you may not answer it. You do not have to win every inner conversation. Some conversations end because you stop participating. Sleep is very good at ending conversations. Allow it. If you fall asleep while a sentence of mine is unfinished, let the sentence remain unfinished. You do not need the conclusion. If you fall asleep while an image is only half formed, let it remain half formed. The deeper point is not artistic completion, it is direction. The arrow need not draw the entire road in order to point. You know where you are turning, toward inward possession, away from psychological exile, toward naturalness, away from strain, toward residence, away from watching the door. That direction can remain even when conscious language disappears. This is why you do not need to memorize techniques. The mind loves to collect instructions. First do this, then do that. Repeat this many times. Hold this picture. Produce this feeling. Avoid that thought. Return before sleep. Repeat again upon waking. And soon the person who desired freedom is carrying a book of rules into bed. Do not do that tonight. There is one principle beneath all useful technique. Become inwardly familiar with the state you wish to call home. Everything else serves that. If a scene helps, use it. If a phrase helps, use it. If silence helps, use silence. If sleep comes quickly, sleep. The principle is larger than the method. A man traveling to a city may arrive by one road today and another road tomorrow. The city is not dependent upon one route. Likewise, fulfillment is not dependent upon one exact ritual. You are learning the city, not worshipping the road. Perhaps you are already becoming sleepy. Do not suddenly become alert because you think something important is about to be said. Nothing I say after this moment is more important than your permission to rest. You are not waiting for a secret sentence. There is no hidden phrase at the end that makes everything before it work. The desire to remain awake for the final instruction is another form of standing outside. It says, perhaps the key has not yet been given to me. But the key is not at the end. The key is the shift you have already begun. You may sleep now. You may sleep before understanding becomes complete. You may sleep before confidence becomes complete. You may sleep while questions remain. You may sleep without knowing the bridge. You may sleep without knowing when. You may sleep without knowing what tomorrow will look like. The fulfilled self is allowed to sleep with unanswered questions, because unanswered questions do not threaten identity. The old self believed that if it stopped thinking, it would lose control. The new state can say, I do not need to solve the entire future while lying in this bed. This is already a form of fulfillment. Think about it. If your deepest desire were already settled, would you need to lie awake calculating every possibility? Would you need to rehearse every conversation? Would you need to prepare for every disappointment? Would you need to check the invisible machinery of life throughout the night? Perhaps not. Then the willingness to sleep is itself an imaginal consequence. Not sleep as an escape, sleep as the act of one who no longer believes vigilance creates safety. There is wisdom in this. The mind has limits. The body has limits. To continue forcing thought after exhaustion is not a sign of faith. Sometimes the most faithful act is to stop. Put the tool down. Let the night continue without your supervision. Tomorrow may require intelligence. Let tomorrow receive a rested mind. Tomorrow may require courage. Let courage rise from a body that was permitted to recover. Tomorrow may require action. Let action come from one who did not spend the night performing imaginary emergencies. You do not prepare for fulfillment by exhausting yourself. You prepare by becoming receptive to another relationship with life. So if you notice the body growing heavy, welcome heaviness, not as something mystical, simply as the body remembering gravity. The head may feel heavier against the pillow. The arms may seem less interested in movement. The legs may feel farther away. The eyes may no longer care to form images clearly. Let all of this be ordinary. You do not need to turn relaxation into evidence. It is enough that the body is resting. Perhaps you hear only pieces of what I say now. A word, a phrase, then nothing. Then my voice again. This is perfectly acceptable. Imagine my words becoming like sounds from another room. You do not have to follow every one. You know someone is speaking. You feel no need to answer. The meaning may come and go. Some sentences may reach you, others may pass unnoticed. There is no examination in the morning. No one will ask which phrase you remember. No reward is given for staying awake. No state is lost because consciousness becomes quiet. Let that relieve you. You can stop listening actively. You do not need to lean toward my voice. Let the voice come to you. If a sentence matters tonight, it will find its place without your effort. If another sentence disappears, let it disappear. The essential thing is not the sentence. It is the gradual release of the one who believed everything depended upon effort. That one may rest. The one who watched. The one who checked. The one who tried to perform faith correctly. The one who feared losing the state. The one who believed one wrong thought could spoil the night. Let that one lie down as well. Perhaps that part of you has been tired for a very long time. It has been keeping records, watching signs, reviewing conversations, replaying mistakes, comparing outcomes, trying to anticipate danger, trying to ensure that desire survives. It has worked enough today. You do not need to dismiss it harshly. Simply tell it. Inwardly, there is nothing more for you to do tonight. Nothing more. The room is secure enough for sleep. The desire is secure enough to leave unexamined. The future is secure enough to remain unseen for a few hours. Your identity does not need to be guarded through the night. The body may sleep. The mind may become quiet. And if the old watcher asks, "But what if I lose the state while sleeping?" Ask yourself, who would lose it? The sleeping mind is not actively choosing against you. It is resting. You are not consciously abandoning fulfillment merely because you are unconscious. A seed beneath the earth does not cease its movement because the gardener has gone indoors. An instrument does not forget its tuning because the musician sets it down for the night. A house remains a house while its owner sleeps. Let the state become like this, something you may inhabit without constant proof, something sufficiently natural that sleep is permitted. Perhaps you will dream. Perhaps you will not remember dreaming. Perhaps the night will seem to disappear instantly. Perhaps you will awaken several times. None of these outcomes determines whether the practice was meaningful. Do not turn sleep itself into a sign. A peaceful night is welcome. A restless night is not a verdict. If you awaken at some hour, and the old concern returns, do not begin repairing the entire state. Notice the darkness. Feel the bed. Remember very simply, I do not need to solve this now. Then rest again. If an image of the desired life comes naturally, enjoy it. If none comes, do not manufacture one from fear. The state can be carried by the absence of struggle. Sometimes the most truthful feeling of the wish fulfilled is not the presence of a vivid scene. It is the absence of the old compulsion. No checking, no bargaining, no planning the entire bridge, no trying to force certainty. Only this moment, only the bed, only the breath, only a little less effort than before. This is enough for sleep. The night does not ask you to become perfect. The night asks you to stop carrying the day. Let the conversations of the day end. Let unfinished business remain unfinished. Let unanswered letters remain unanswered. Let the future stay behind its curtain. There will be another hour for action. This hour belongs to release. And as you release, do not imagine that you are doing nothing. There is great intelligence in allowing a state to settle without interference. The water clears, the dust falls, the room becomes quiet, the body restores itself, the mind ceases its endless arrangement. You are not abandoning the wish, you are removing the noise around it. Perhaps by morning you will not remember where you fell asleep in these words. That is good. You do not need to know. Perhaps the last thing you remember will be the image of the house. Perhaps a sentence. Perhaps only the sound of my voice. Perhaps nothing. Nothing is required. You are permitted to disappear into sleep before I disappear into silence. You are permitted to stop following the argument. You are permitted to let the deeper mind receive what the conscious mind no longer holds. You are permitted to become quiet. No technique must be completed. No visualization must be maintained. No feeling must be protected. No state must be inspected. You may enter it, rest in it briefly, and sleep. The body knows how to fall. Let it fall into the bed. The eyes know how to stop looking. Let them stop. The hands know how to release. Let them release. The mind knows how to lose the thread of a sentence. Let it lose the thread. You do not need to find it again. Perhaps my voice is already farther away. Let it be farther away. You are not coming toward me. You are going deeper into your own rest. The house is quiet. The street outside no longer matters. The key is somewhere on the table. You do not need to remember where. You are inside. That is enough. And if sleep reaches you before the next idea, before the next sentence, before the next breath of my voice, then let sleep have you completely. Nothing has been interrupted. Nothing has been missed. You do not need to remain awake to keep the door closed behind you. You may sleep as one who has already come home. And now, while the body rests and the night continues without asking anything from you, I want you to notice a mistake so common that it can hide inside even the sincerest desire. You may believe that what you want exists somewhere outside you. A sum of money, a loving relationship, a position, a home, recognition, freedom, security, a change in circumstance. And because the symbol appears outside, you may assume that the state you seek must also come from outside. You say, when the money arrives, then I will feel secure. When the relationship appears, then I will feel that I belong. When the position is given to me, then I will feel recognized. When I enter the house, then I will feel established. When the obstacle disappears, then I will feel free. The sequence seems reasonable. First the evidence, then the state. First the visible thing, then the inner permission. But this is precisely how the wish remains psychologically outside you. You have often chased the evidence, while refusing yourself the state the evidence was meant to confirm. Let that become clear, without becoming heavy. You have often chased the evidence, while refusing yourself the state the evidence was meant to confirm. The money was not merely money. You wanted what you believed money would allow you to feel. Perhaps relief, perhaps dignity, perhaps room to breathe. Perhaps the freedom to make decisions without fear standing beside you. Perhaps generosity. Perhaps the simple absence of that tightening in the body whenever another obligation appeared. You looked at the symbol and called it the desire. But beneath the symbol was a state. The relationship was not merely another person. You wanted the feeling implied by the relationship. To be known, to be welcomed, to belong, to feel that your presence mattered, to rest in affection without constantly wondering whether it would disappear. You looked at the person and called the person the desire. But beneath the person was a state. The position was not merely a title. Perhaps it represented recognition, competence, importance, contribution, the feeling that your effort had a place in the world. The house was not merely brick, timber, glass, and land. Perhaps it represented stability, privacy, freedom, a place where the body could finally stop feeling temporary. The object was visible. The state was invisible. And because the object was visible, you gave it causation. You said, "This thing will give me the state." But what if the thing was never the source? What if it was meant to become the expression of a state already accepted within? This changes the entire relationship between you and desire. You are no longer a beggar waiting for an external symbol to bestow an inner identity. You begin to recognize that the state can be entered before the symbol has completed its appearance. This does not mean that the symbol is meaningless. It does not mean you should stop wanting the house, the relationship, the work, the money, the opportunity, or the visible change. A symbol may be beautiful. A desire may be specific. You may know exactly what you prefer. But do not confuse the messenger with the message. Do not confuse the vessel with what it carries. Do not confuse the outer form with the inner state that gives the form its meaning. A cup matters because of what it allows you to hold. A doorway matters because of where it allows you to enter. A letter matters because of the meaning carried by the words. The symbol has value, but the meaning is deeper. Suppose a man desires a large sum of money because he believes that with it he will finally be safe. He imagines the figure. He calculates what it would purchase. He sees himself opening an account and looking at the amount. But every day, while imagining the amount, he continues living inwardly as one who is unsafe. He checks constantly. He fears every expense. He interprets every unexpected cost as proof that life is against him. He says, "When the amount arrives, then I will stop living like this." Do you see the contradiction? He asks the symbol of security to arrive while continually rehearsing insecurity as identity. He wants the fruit while watering another root. Now imagine that instead of denying the present financial facts, he begins giving himself the state represented by the desire, not by spending recklessly, not by pretending that a number on paper is different from what it is, but by asking, how would I relate to this moment if I did not call myself abandoned by life? How would I breathe if I believed solutions could exist before I saw all of them? How would I meet one necessary decision if panic did not have to be the first voice in the room? Perhaps the visible sum has not changed tonight, but something more fundamental has begun to change, the identity from which the sum is interpreted. The man has stopped asking money to create the whole of his security. He has begun meeting money from security. And that is an entirely different psychological position. Now suppose the desire is love. A person may think constantly about being loved, while inwardly living as the one who is not chosen. They may imagine an embrace, and then spend the next hour wondering whether another person cares. They may picture companionship, and then interpret silence as evidence that companionship is impossible. They may imagine a future relationship, while every day speaking to themselves as the one left outside affection. Then they say, once someone loves me, I will finally feel lovable. But the desired relationship was supposed to reflect love. It was never meant to create the existence of lovability from nothing. If another human being becomes the sole source of your right to belong, then even when love appears, fear will follow closely behind it. You will possess the symbol while still fearing the loss of the state. You may be loved and constantly test whether love remains. You may receive affection and still prepare for abandonment. You may hear kind words and immediately ask whether they were sincere. The object has arrived. The old identity remains. Then the person wonders why fulfillment feels so insecure, because the state was never accepted as home. The outer form cannot permanently compensate for an identity that continues rejecting what the form was meant to symbolize. This is why I would have you go deeper than acquisition. Enter the state. If you desire love, learn the inner shape of belonging, not control, not possession of another, belonging. How does one who belongs sit in a quiet room? How does one who belongs hear silence? How does one who belongs remember the past? Perhaps without using every old wound as proof that love must leave again. You need not become emotionally invulnerable. You need not erase natural human sensitivity. You simply stop placing the whole authority of your identity in another person's immediate response. The relationship then becomes an expression of love rather than a courtroom in which your worth must continually be judged. This is the difference between symbol and state. Suppose the desire is a better position in your work. You may say, when I am promoted, then I will feel important. When my ability is recognized, then I will feel capable. When others finally acknowledge what I can do, then I will stop doubting myself. Again, the position has become a permission slip for identity. You postpone capability until the world certifies it. But how will the capable self walk into the opportunities through which recognition might come if you refuse to occupy capability until recognition has already arrived? The symbol is being asked to produce the very state from which the symbol would most naturally be received. Reverse the order inwardly, not as arrogance, not as fantasy, as assumption. You may still have much to learn. Capability does not mean knowing everything. It means that not knowing something no longer becomes proof that you are fundamentally inadequate. You may still make mistakes. Recognition does not mean never failing. It means a mistake no longer has the authority to erase your sense of value. You may still desire advancement, but you approach the work differently. You are not laboring every hour to prove that you deserve existence. You are expressing something. You are contributing. You are learning from the state of one who expects that their effort can have consequence. Then the outer position, if it comes, confirms something you have already permitted yourself to occupy inwardly. Suppose the desire is a home. Perhaps you see a particular room, a garden, a doorway, a table near a window. You may love the exact form. There is nothing wrong with specificity. But ask what the house means to you. Is it permanence? Is it freedom from uncertainty? Is it privacy? Is it beauty? Is it peace? Is it the feeling of having somewhere to return? If you make the physical structure the sole owner of those states, then every day before the house appears becomes a day of psychological homelessness. You say, I cannot feel at home until I possess that place. But perhaps the deeper work is learning what home means inwardly. A state in which being is no longer constantly packed for departure. A state in which the nervous system does not treat every circumstance as temporary danger. A state in which you begin to say, I have a place in life. Then the desired physical home becomes an expression of inner residence. You may still prefer the exact house. You may still imagine the rooms, but you are no longer standing outside them as the one who has no home anywhere. You are bringing home to the image. This is a very different act. One imagines in order to escape homelessness. The other imagines from belonging. The first says, give me the house so I may become established. The second says, I enter the state of establishment, and I allow life to give that state suitable form. Do not reduce this to words. Feel the order. State first. Expression follows. Identity first. Evidence follows. Meaning first. Symbol follows. This does not mean that every external circumstance instantly changes when you change a feeling. Do not turn principle into impatience. You are learning causation at the psychological level. A state alters perception. Perception alters interpretation. Interpretation alters action. Action alters relationship. Expectation changes what feels possible. What feels possible changes what you notice and permit. And beyond all conscious planning, life contains more connections than the reasoning mind can see from one moment. You do not need to map them tonight. You need only stop insisting that the visible symbol must come first before you grant yourself any access to the state. How strange it is that a person may say, "I desire peace," and then refuse peace until circumstances become peaceful. They say, "I cannot rest because the matter is unresolved." But if the matter were resolved, would peace be something earned from the resolution, or was peace the state you desired all along? Can you give yourself 1 minute of the state before the matter changes? Not because the matter is unimportant, because peace may allow you to meet it differently. This is not denial. It is refusing to make disturbance the only available response to an unfinished world. Life is almost always unfinished in some direction. If peace depends upon total completion of all circumstances, peace will remain outside forever. There will always be another matter, another uncertainty, another question. So perhaps peace must become a state from which incompletion can be lived. The same is true of freedom. Many say, "Once this situation ends, then I will be free." And perhaps outwardly, yes, a real restriction may need to end. But if freedom is postponed entirely until every condition changes, the mind may rehearse imprisonment so deeply that even when one door opens, it immediately discovers another wall. The state of confinement has become identity. Freedom must begin as a different relationship to being. Perhaps it begins with the recognition that no passing condition contains the total definition of what you are. Perhaps it begins with one thought you decline to obey. Perhaps with one old story you no longer repeat. Perhaps with one moment in which you refuse to imagine the future only through the shape of the present limitation. That is freedom beginning before the symbol arrives. Then the symbol can meet a consciousness prepared to inhabit it. Do you see why some receive what they once desired and quickly feel unsatisfied? They chase the symbol without discovering the state. The new position arrives, but insecurity remains. The relationship arrives, but abandonment remains inwardly alive. The money arrives, but scarcity remains the governing expectation. The house arrives, but restlessness remains. They possess what they thought would change identity, yet identity continues producing the old experience within the new surroundings. The furniture changed, the occupant did not. Then another desire appears, another symbol, another thing that promises to produce the state later, and the chase begins again. I do not condemn desire. Desire can be a messenger. It can reveal the state seeking expression through you. When you desire something, ask not only, "What do I want?" Ask, "What does this represent to me? What state am I truly asking this thing to confirm? If the desired event happened tomorrow, what would I finally permit myself to feel? Safe, loved, respected, free, at home, capable, wanted, at peace?" Then a new question appears. Why must that inner permission wait entirely upon tomorrow? Can I taste the state tonight without falsifying the facts? This is the doorway, not claiming that the outer symbol is already physically present when it is not, but ceasing to exile the inner state merely because the symbol has not yet arrived. You can say, "The external form is still unfolding, and yet I do not need to call myself the opposite of what I seek. The relationship may not yet be visible. I do not need to call myself unlovable. The financial condition may still require attention. I do not need to call myself abandoned. The opportunity may not yet have appeared. I do not need to call myself incapable. The house may not yet be mine. I do not need to call myself homeless in consciousness. The matter may not yet be resolved. I do not need to call myself powerless." This is how you begin reclaiming the state from the symbol. And once reclaimed, the symbol loses some of its frightening power over you. You may still desire it, perhaps deeply, but you no longer say, "Without this, I cannot be." That sentence was bondage. Without this person, I cannot be loved. Without this amount, I cannot be secure. Without this title, I cannot be important. Without this house, I cannot belong. Without this outcome, I cannot have peace. Do not give any object such absolute authority over being. Objects move. People have their own lives. Positions change. Circumstances rise and fall. If the whole self is attached to one form, fear must accompany possession, because what can be obtained can also be lost. But a state accepted inwardly is not held hostage by one particular expression. This allows desire to become cleaner. You can prefer without pleading. You can love without making another person your creator. You can pursue work without making a title your soul. You can seek financial improvement without treating a number as the source of life. You can desire a home without believing your right to belong begins only when a deed is signed. This is dignity. It is also imagination used wisely. The world of form is not rejected. It is restored to its proper place. Expression, not source. Evidence, not essence. Symbol, not identity. Let the body feel the difference. Imagine holding your desire tightly as an object outside you. Perhaps it is a letter, a key, a sum written on paper, a ring, a contract, a photograph of a house. Notice the reaching. The mind moves toward it. The chest leans. The hand almost closes around what is not yet physically present. Now let the object become less important for a moment. Ask, what does this mean? Not what does it cost? Not how will it come? What does it mean? Perhaps the answer is security. Let the object fade. Keep security. Perhaps the answer is belonging. Let the object fade. Keep belonging. Perhaps recognition. Let the object fade. Keep recognition. Perhaps freedom. Let the object fade. Keep freedom. Do not worry. You have not rejected the desire. You have gone beneath it. A tree is not lost because you discover the root. The root gives the tree life. You are going to the root. Perhaps you have spent so long staring at branches that you forgot where nourishment enters. The state is nourishment. The symbol is fruit. A person desperate for fruit may pull at branches and damage them. A wise gardener attends to the root. Tonight, you do not need to pull anything toward you. You may tend the root through assumption. What is the emotional soil of security? Perhaps the absence of immediate alarm. What is the soil of belonging? Perhaps no longer standing inwardly at the edge of every room, waiting to be dismissed. What is the soil of recognition? Perhaps treating your own contribution with respect before demanding that everyone else recognize it. What is the soil of freedom? Perhaps no longer rehearsing the walls at every opportunity. You do not need to perfect these states tonight. Let them become imaginable. That is enough. The old mind may object. It may say, but I want the actual thing. Of course, you are not being asked to stop wanting the actual thing. You are being asked to stop making the actual thing responsible for creating an inner state that imagination can begin occupying now. Keep the preference. Release the exile. Keep the desire. Release the identity of permanent absence. Keep the symbol. Enter its meaning. The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. When the symbol remains outside and the state remains forbidden, desire becomes torment. When the state is entered inwardly, desire becomes direction. There may still be movement ahead, but you are no longer walking as one psychologically empty. You carry the meaning of the destination while the road unfolds. This is why I would have you sleep from the state rather than sleep merely thinking about the object. If you fall asleep imagining stacks of money while the body feels frightened, you may still be sleeping from fear. If you fall asleep seeing a relationship while feeling abandoned, the picture may remain outside. If you imagine a house while the deeper self says, I have nowhere I belong, the house remains across the street. Go beneath the picture. What would the symbol settle in you? Let that settling become the final movement before sleep. Perhaps money would settle the constant calculation. Then let calculation rest for a little while. Perhaps love would settle the need to interpret every silence. Then let one silence remain neutral. Perhaps recognition would settle the urge to prove yourself. Then let yourself stop proving for this hour. Perhaps home would settle the feeling that life is temporary and unsafe. Then let the bed beneath you become a small symbol of present residence. You are here. You are supported now. Not by every future circumstance, by this moment. Begin where you actually are. The state does not need a grand entrance. It can be introduced through one honest experience. This bed supports me. This breath arrives without being forced. This room permits me to rest. This hour does not demand that I solve tomorrow. From these small truths, a larger state can become less foreign. Security may begin as one unclenched breath. Belonging may begin as the recognition that awareness has a place in this moment. Freedom may begin as refusing to follow one old thought. Recognition may begin as respecting one quality in yourself without asking for applause. The symbol no longer seems infinitely far away because its meaning has begun appearing in the present. Do not underestimate the small expression. A seed contains the nature of the tree without looking like a tree. A quiet moment of support may contain the nature of abundance without looking like wealth. A moment of self-respect may contain the nature of recognition without a title. A peaceful breath may contain the nature of freedom without the whole road having changed. The mind says, this is too small. The state says, this is the same quality in seed form. Let the seed be enough for tonight. You are not required to grow the whole tree before morning. You are learning to recognize the state in forms that are already available. This makes fulfillment less theatrical, less distant, more natural, and naturalness is what allows residence. The old way said, once the symbol appears, I will finally permit the state. The new way says, I accept the state and allow its appropriate symbols to find their place in life. This does not mean you command every detail of existence. It means you stop denying yourself inwardly while waiting for outer confirmation. Perhaps that alone feels like relief. Let relief be quiet. No need to call it success. No need to check whether you are now in the state. That would make the state another external object to chase. Simply notice whether there is a little less distance. Perhaps the desire is still present, but it no longer feels entirely outside. Its meaning is nearer, perhaps within, security within, belonging within, recognition within, freedom within, peace within, not complete, not perfected, available. That word matters, available. The state is available before the symbol fully arrives. You do not need to earn permission to taste it. You do not need a letter from circumstances. You do not need someone else to place it in your hand. You may enter it as imagination, as attitude, as a quiet bodily release, as a different interpretation, as one moment of inner speech, and then you may sleep. The body can grow heavier now. The object of desire may move farther from attention. Let it. The symbol does not need to remain before you. The state may remain as atmosphere. You may no longer see the house, but perhaps you feel home. You may no longer see the money, but perhaps you feel 1 degree less abandoned by tomorrow. You may no longer see the person, but perhaps you feel less excluded from love. You may no longer see the position, but perhaps you feel that your ability deserves expression. The picture can fade. The state can remain. This is the movement I want you to learn. Not more imagery for its own sake. Not endless fascination with symbols. The state beneath the symbol. The meaning beneath the object. The identity beneath the wish. And if sleep begins carrying you away before you can name that state clearly, let it. Perhaps the deeper part of you understands without a label. Perhaps all it needs tonight is the release of one old sentence. I cannot feel this until that happens. Let that sentence dissolve. You do not need to replace it with anything dramatic. Perhaps only this. I can begin inwardly now. I can begin inwardly now. No promise concerning every external detail. No denial, only permission. The symbol may come through its own sequence. The state may begin now. The house may still be somewhere ahead. Home may begin now. The relationship may still be unseen. Belonging may begin now. The financial change may still require a bridge. Support may begin now. Recognition may still be developing. Self-respect may begin now. Freedom may still have outer steps. Inner captivity need not be total now. This is enough. The desire is no longer entirely outside you. Its deepest meaning has crossed the threshold. Let it sit quietly beside you. You do not need to speak to it. You do not need to ask when it will become visible. You do not need to turn it again into an object. Just rest near the state. Let the symbol sleep. Let the question of form sleep. Let the timing sleep. Let the road sleep. What you truly wanted beneath all of them was a way of being. And tonight, even before every visible proof has arrived, that way of being is no longer forbidden to you. And now, as the image of the outer symbol becomes less important, and the state beneath it becomes more familiar, I want to free you from another misunderstanding. Many people hear the word imagination and immediately think of pictures. They believe imagination means seeing a clear scene somewhere behind closed eyes. They imagine that if they cannot produce a bright image, if they cannot see colors distinctly, if faces remain vague, if rooms appear only for a second and disappear, then perhaps they possess very little imagination. I tell you this is not so. Imagination is far greater than a picture. A picture is only one language imagination may use. You imagine whenever you inwardly occupy a position that the senses have not yet confirmed. You imagine when you expect. You imagine when you interpret. You imagine when you silently speak to another person who is not physically before you. You imagine when you decide what an event means. You imagine when you anticipate how tomorrow will feel. You imagine when you remember the past and change its emotional meaning. You imagine when the body prepares for something that has not yet occurred. You imagine when you hear an inward voice. You imagine when you simply know, without seeing any picture at all, who you are in relation to what is happening. Imagination is not a gallery in which you walk from painting to painting. It is the living power by which experience is inwardly arranged. A person may see almost nothing with the mind's eye, and yet possess a powerful imagination. Consider the person who waits for an important conversation tomorrow. They may form no clear picture of the room. They may not see the other person's face. They may not consciously visualize anything. Yet they lie in bed, expecting the conversation to go badly. The stomach tightens. The heart anticipates. Inner sentences begin. They will not understand me. I will say the wrong thing. They will reject what I ask. Tomorrow becomes emotionally real before tomorrow arrives. Is this not imagination? No vivid picture was necessary. A whole state was created through expectation. The body received it. The mind entered it. The future was given meaning. The person was not merely thinking of tomorrow. They were already experiencing themselves as the one for whom tomorrow goes badly. That is imagination in action. Now reverse it. Suppose the same person does not attempt to construct a perfect visual scene. They simply ask, how would I meet this conversation if I knew that I could remain composed regardless of the other person's response? Perhaps no image appears, but something shifts. The jaw releases slightly. The imagined voice becomes calmer. The inner argument stops. The person hears themselves say, I can speak clearly, and allow the conversation to unfold. The room is still invisible. The faces are still vague, but the imaginal position has changed completely. This is powerful imagination. Do not measure imagination by brightness. Measure it by residence. Where are you inwardly? Who are you while thinking? What do you expect? What meaning have you given the scene? What does the body anticipate? What conversation are you carrying? From what position are you viewing the future? These questions tell you far more than asking whether you can see a perfect picture. You may close your eyes tonight and see only darkness. Let darkness be enough. You do not need to paint upon it. You may know what you mean without seeing it. If I ask you to imagine that you are standing in your childhood home, perhaps you do not see every wall clearly, yet you may know where the door would be. You may know which direction the kitchen lies. You may feel something about the place. Perhaps a particular sound seems near. Perhaps you remember the quality of the air. Perhaps there is simply a sense of being there. That sense is imagination. If I ask you to think of a person you love, perhaps their face does not become sharp, yet you know exactly whose presence you are entertaining. You may hear the manner in which they speak. You may know how you feel around them. You may sense their nearness. The fact that the image is not photographic does not diminish the act. You know, and knowing is one of imagination's languages. The human being imagines constantly through meaning. A sound in the night occurs. One person says inwardly, nothing unusual. The body remains calm. Another hears the same sound and says inwardly, something is wrong. The body prepares. Same sound, different imaginal meaning. A letter arrives. One person sees possibility. Another sees rejection before opening it. A delay occurs. One calls it a pause. Another calls it a disaster. A stranger gives a brief look. One thinks nothing of it. Another builds an entire judgment. The senses deliver an event. Imagination supplies a world around the event. This is why I would have you become aware not merely of what you see inwardly, but of the meaning you continuously add to what you see outwardly. Meaning is imaginal. You may never have realized how much of your daily experience is created through invisible interpretation. A person does not answer immediately. The senses report silence. That is all. Imagination says, I am forgotten. Or imagination says, perhaps they are occupied. Or imagination says nothing and allows silence to remain silence. The sensory fact is small. The imaginal meaning can become enormous. You have often believed you were reacting to reality, when you were reacting to the meaning imagination had placed upon reality. This need not frighten you. It should liberate you. For if meaning has been supplied, meaning can be reconsidered. You do not have to force a pleasant interpretation upon everything. Sometimes the honest meaning is simply, I do not yet know. That can be freedom. The old imagination rushed to complete every unfinished sentence negatively. Silence meant rejection. Delay meant failure. Difficulty meant impossibility. Uncertainty meant danger. One mistake meant incapacity. One closed door meant permanent exclusion. The facts were fragments. Imagination wrote the rest of the story. Now you can become conscious of the author. This is why I say imagination is creative. Not because every fleeting picture immediately becomes an object. That childish interpretation would make imagination a source of fear. You would spend your life terrified of every strange thought. I mean that imagination is the inner faculty through which you continually select states, meanings, expectations, identities, and possible futures. And what you repeatedly occupy becomes natural. What becomes natural begins organizing the way you perceive and respond. The state becomes the lens. You no longer notice the lens. You simply say, this is the world. But another person may stand beside you and inhabit another world while seeing many of the same facts. The change of state changes the world experienced because it changes the one experiencing it. Imagine a room with many windows. One window faces a narrow wall, another faces a garden, another faces the road, another opens toward distant hills. The room has not moved, but the view changes according to the window through which you look. Your state is such a window. The person who says, I am unwanted, looks through one opening. They notice exclusion everywhere. The person who says, I belong, looks through another. They notice welcome, possibility, and mutuality. The person who assumes life is hostile looks through a narrow window. Every unexpected event becomes threat. The person who assumes support is possible looks through another. The same unexpected event may become information, redirection, or simply something to handle. You do not need to smash the old window. You need only recognize that it is not the only one. Imagination allows you to move, and this movement may happen without one visual image. Perhaps you change the inner conversation. That is imagination. Listen to the conversations you conduct while no one else is present. You may replay what someone said. Then you answer them inwardly. Then you imagine their reply. Perhaps the physical conversation ended hours ago. Yet another version continues within you. You may win arguments no one is having. You may defend yourself before imaginary accusations. You may hear criticism from people who are nowhere near you. You may rehearse rejection. You may imagine being misunderstood. This is not mere thinking. You are inhabiting an unseen relationship. The body may respond as though the person were in the room. Shoulders harden. The pulse changes. The face forms an expression. You are responding to an imaginal presence. Therefore, if inner conversation can disturb you, it can also be used lovingly. You need not force another person to speak your desired words outwardly. You may alter the relation you occupy inwardly. Perhaps instead of hearing accusation, you hear understanding. Perhaps instead of arguing, you hear resolution. Perhaps instead of pleading for recognition, you hear a trusted voice speaking to the self you have chosen to become. Not a grand speech, something ordinary. You seem at ease. You handled that beautifully. I'm glad for you. You belong here. A few inward words can imply an entire state. You may not hear them audibly. You may simply know what was said. That is enough. Imagination understands implication. A single phrase may contain a whole world. Suppose you inwardly hear a friend say, "You seem so settled lately." That phrase might imply that something once troublesome no longer governs you. It implies change already observed. It implies continuity, because they say lately. It places you after a transition rather than before it. The phrase is small. The state it implies is large. This is why imagination need not be elaborate. A seed is not large, yet it carries a pattern. An imaginal act may be brief and still carry the pattern of fulfillment. You do not have to build an entire city before sleep. One street lamp may imply the city. One familiar voice may imply the relationship. One relaxed gesture may imply freedom. One ordinary thought may imply security. The mind loves complexity because complexity gives it something to manage. But the deeper state may be approached through simplicity. Suppose your desire concerns financial ease. You might try to imagine numbers, documents, rooms, possessions, conversations, journeys, and every visible consequence. Soon you are tired. The scene becomes work. Instead, ask what ordinary moment would imply that financial fear no longer occupies the center of your life. Perhaps you imagine placing an envelope on a table after opening it. Nothing dramatic happened. You simply read it and set it down without fear. Perhaps you hear yourself thinking, "I will take care of that tomorrow." And then your attention moves away. That movement away may be the most important part of the imaginal act. The old self would remain obsessed. The supported self can think of something else. Imagination is not the envelope. It is the state from which the envelope is handled. Suppose your desire concerns love. You need not construct an elaborate romantic scene. Perhaps you imagine sitting in silence with someone and feeling no need to perform. No words, no dramatic embrace. Only the absence of the old fear that silence means withdrawal. You feel permitted to exist beside another person without earning every moment of affection. That quiet permission may contain more of love than 1,000 pictures watched from longing. Suppose the desire concerns confidence. Do not imagine yourself standing upon a mountain declaring your greatness if such an image feels foreign. Imagine making a small decision without asking 5 imaginary judges whether you are allowed. Imagine beginning. Imagine sending the letter. Imagine speaking one honest sentence. Imagine making a mistake and remaining intact. Confidence may be the absence of inner collapse. Again, imagination works through meaning. The act says, "I can remain myself while acting." That is a state. Suppose you desire freedom. Perhaps the strongest imaginal act is not seeing chains fall. Perhaps it is imagining an ordinary afternoon in which the old restriction does not occur to you for several minutes. You are thinking about something else. A book, a meal, a place you would like to visit. The former problem has become background. This implies freedom through absence. Imagination can use what is missing from the scene. Do not overlook this. Sometimes fulfillment is represented by the disappearance of an old mental activity. No checking, no rehearsing, no waiting, no guarding, no bargaining. The silence where fear used to speak may itself be imaginal evidence. This is particularly useful at night. You do not need to fill the darkness with pictures. You may allow darkness to remain darkness and notice what no longer needs to be happening inside it. Do I need to rehearse tomorrow? No. Do I need to convince anyone? No. Do I need to solve the bridge? No. Do I need to see a perfect scene? No. The absence of these activities can become the state. Imagination is also expectation. Expectation is one of the quietest forms of imagination because it often operates without conscious imagery. You enter a familiar room expecting the chair to support you. No picture is created. You simply behave from the assumption. You write to a trusted friend, expecting recognition. You do not need to visualize every stage. Expectation is already present in the act. You walk toward a familiar staircase, expecting the next step where experience has taught you it will be. Life is filled with assumptions, functioning silently as expectation. Therefore, when I speak of imagining fulfillment, I am also asking, what do you expect as one who occupies this state? The answer need not concern the exact event. The supported person may expect that a difficulty can be addressed. The beloved person may expect respect to be natural. The capable person may expect learning rather than humiliation from challenge. The free person may expect options to exist even before every option is visible. Expectation has a posture. You can often feel it before you can explain it. The body anticipates according to state. This is another language of imagination. The body may lean psychologically toward rejection. It may prepare for bad news. It may tighten before opening a letter. It may hold the breath before hearing an answer. The body is participating in the imaginal act. So if visual images are weak for you, begin with the body, not by forcing relaxation. Ask what this body would no longer need to prepare for if the wish were already integrated. Perhaps the jaw would no longer need to defend. Perhaps the stomach would no longer need to predict. Perhaps the shoulders would no longer carry an unseen burden. Perhaps the hands would no longer need to grip. Do not imitate a posture. Let one unnecessary preparation cease. This may be more authentic than seeing a vivid scene. The body can say, I am safe enough to rest, without any words. The body can say, I belong, by no longer shrinking before an imagined judgment. The body can say, I am supported, by permitting weight to be received. The body can say, I do not need to chase, through stillness. These are imaginal statements made in flesh. Perspective is another language. Earlier, you moved from looking through the window to looking from within the house. That is perspective. A picture of a fulfilled life viewed from outside may still preserve desire, but a very simple, incomplete scene viewed from within may imply possession. If you imagine holding a key, do not merely see another version of yourself holding it. Feel where the key would be in relation to your hand. If you imagine hearing good news, do not watch your face reacting. Hear the words as though they enter your ears. If you imagine sitting in a desired room, do not arrange yourself in the scene like an actor viewed by an audience. Let the room surround you. Let some objects be behind you. This matters. The world seen from fulfillment should not all be placed before you like scenery. You are inside it. Some things are behind you, some beside you, some beneath you. Perspective says, I am here. Yet even this does not require visual clarity. You can know that the door is behind you without seeing it. You can know that someone is beside you without seeing their face. You can know that something has happened without constructing the event. This knowing is imaginal occupancy. Do not turn first-person perspective into another technical rule. There may be moments when seeing yourself from outside is useful. Perhaps you imagine how a friend would perceive your change. That can imply fulfillment. The question is not whether one viewpoint is forbidden. The question is whether the scene leaves the fulfilled self distant or allows the identity to become yours. If watching yourself makes the fulfilled person feel like someone else, enter. If seeing yourself through another's eyes helps you recognize the new identity, use it. Imagination is living. It is not a rigid mechanical system. The state is the purpose. Technique serves the state. This is why I do not want you worrying tonight about whether you are a visual person, an auditory person, or anything else. You are imaginative because you are human. You have been imagining all your life. You may simply have been calling it worry, or memory, or prediction, or interpretation, or daydreaming, or inner conversation, or expectation. You already know how to enter unseen states. Fear proves it. Have you ever feared something that did not happen? Then you know how to experience inwardly what the senses do not confirm. Have you ever become angry remembering a conversation that is no longer occurring? Then you know how imagination can make the absent emotionally present. Have you ever smiled because you remembered someone dear? Then you know how imagination can alter the body without external contact. Have you ever anticipated an enjoyable event and felt lighter before it occurred? Then you know how an unseen future can influence the present. The faculty is working. The question is not whether you possess imagination. The question is what state you habitually permit imagination to animate. This should remove a great burden. You do not need to acquire a mysterious power. You need to become more conscious of a familiar one. The anxious person is already an accomplished imaginer. They imagine consequences, conversations, reactions, delays, and dangers with remarkable persistence. If that same persistence were turned gently toward another state, they would discover that the faculty itself was never the problem. The direction was unconscious. Do not condemn yourself for having imagined painfully. You were using a power without understanding its neutrality. A knife may prepare food or cause injury. The instrument is not morally divided. Its use gives the result meaning. Imagination can rehearse rejection or belonging. It can anticipate failure or capability. It can revisit injury endlessly or begin giving the past another emotional conclusion. It can make absence central or fulfillment natural. Tonight, use it lovingly. And by lovingly, I do not mean sentimentally. I mean in a manner that does not degrade yourself or another. Do not imagine domination where what you truly desire is love. Do not imagine humiliation of another in order to feel important. Do not imagine forcing a person to become the proof of your worth. Go to the state beneath such demands: belonging, mutuality, respect, security, freedom. Let imagination serve the quality rather than the compulsion. A loving imagination does not need to enslave another person in order to free you. It frees identity first. You may then meet others from greater dignity. Perhaps you are barely following my words now. That is all right. You do not need to remember these categories: identity, conversation, expectation, meaning, body, perspective. You do not have to repeat them. They are not a formula. I mention them only to show you how large imagination truly is. You have many doors into the same state. If pictures do not come, use knowing. If words come naturally, hear them. If neither comes, notice expectation. If expectation feels difficult, notice the body. If the body is restless, do not fight it. Change one meaning. Perhaps all you do tonight is take a restless sensation and refuse to name it as proof that something is wrong. That is imagination used consciously. You are selecting meaning. Perhaps a thought says, I cannot visualize, therefore this will not work for me. Notice what has just happened. That statement itself is imagination. It imagines limitation. It assigns meaning to an ability. It says, because I do not see pictures clearly, I am excluded. Do not accept the conclusion. You are already imagining. You have just done it through language. Now select another meaning. I do not need clear pictures to occupy a state. Feel how simple that is. I do not need clear pictures to occupy a state. Perhaps the darkness behind the eyes remains unchanged. Good. Let darkness remain. What state can exist within darkness? Peace can. Belonging can. Support can. Relief can. Expectation can. A quiet certainty can. The absence of reaching can. Darkness does not prevent identity. You may fall asleep without seeing anything and still sleep as the one who has ceased waiting. This may be particularly powerful for you. No picture to maintain. No scene to repair. Only an inward position. Suppose the position is, I am no longer begging life for permission to belong. You do not need to see belonging. Let the sentence change the meaning of the bed. You are not lying there as the excluded one trying to enter tomorrow. You are lying there as one who has a place in being now. Perhaps the body responds, perhaps not. No matter. The position has been introduced. Suppose the position is, I am not abandoned by possibility. You need not see a road. Simply stop declaring that no road exists. There is room around the future again. That room is imaginal. Suppose the position is, I can meet what comes from greater dignity. No scene required. The phrase alters expectation. You have imagined. Imagination can be as quiet as a changed conclusion. Never underestimate a conclusion. A conclusion is a state condensed into meaning. I always fail. That is imagination. People leave me. That is imagination. There is never enough. That is imagination. Nothing changes for me. That is imagination. These statements may feel like observations because they were repeated after selected experiences, but they are more than reports. They become instructions concerning what evidence matters and what future seems natural. Change the conclusion and perception begins to reorganize, not by lying, by refusing to turn partial history into permanent identity. Perhaps the new conclusion is modest. I do not know the end from here. That alone breaks the old prophecy. Or, this event does not define what is possible. Or, I can occupy a different state before every circumstance agrees. Or, what I have repeatedly expected is not the only future available. These are imaginal movements. No palace, no brilliant light, no perfect picture, only consciousness changing its location. This is why a person with little visual imagery may imagine more powerfully than one who creates spectacular scenes. One may see a magnificent future every night and spend the day expecting defeat. Another may see almost nothing but quietly begin expecting support. Which state is more deeply occupied? The answer is not determined by picture quality. It is determined by identity. A beautiful picture can remain entertainment. A quiet assumption can become residence. Do not seek spectacle. Seek naturalness. If an image comes, let it serve naturalness. If it does not, let meaning serve. If a voice comes, hear it. If silence comes, inhabit silence. The creative faculty is not offended by simplicity. Perhaps it prefers simplicity, because the reasoning mind has less to interfere with. A single inward sentence before sleep. A single sense of release. A single implication. Then rest. You may imagine that the desired matter is complete simply by noticing what would no longer occupy attention. The old worry would be absent. Let it be absent for 10 seconds. You have imagined from the end. The old inner argument would be finished. Let it stop before the final reply. You have imagined. The need to check would be gone. Decline one check. You have imagined. The body would rest more freely. Give one area permission to soften. You have imagined. You see how intimate imagination is? It is not something you perform only with closed eyes. It is woven into your relation with life. And because it is always near, you need not strain to find it tonight. It is already here in the meaning you give my voice. Already here in what you expect from sleep. Already here in the identity you bring to the bed. Already here in the way you interpret your desire. Already here in whether you think of tomorrow as an enemy, an examination, or simply another day through which the state may continue becoming natural. Perhaps now you can stop trying to imagine. That phrase may surprise you. Stop trying to imagine, and notice that imagination continues. My words produce meanings. A sense of space appears. Perhaps a room. Perhaps no room. Perhaps only a feeling of quiet. You cannot stop the faculty completely while conscious. It is part of how consciousness organizes experience, so you do not have to force it. Guide it lightly, like turning the face toward warmth. You need not manufacture the sun. Simply turn. Tonight, turn toward the state, not the photograph of the state itself. What is it like to be the one who no longer stands outside? Maybe the answer is not seen. Maybe it is known. Inside. What is it like to be the one who belongs? Perhaps there is no image, only less defense. What is it like to be supported? Perhaps no numbers appear, only less fear of tomorrow. What is it like to be free? Perhaps no gates open in the mind, only one thought ceases to command you. This is enough. Let the mind become simpler as sleep approaches. No gallery, no collection of pictures, no need to walk past one imagined masterpiece after another. One state, one quiet position. Perhaps only this. I am here within the life of imagination, not outside it. And even that may fade. The words may become too many. Then let them shorten. I am here. Shorter still. I am. No image necessary. No color. No face. No scene. I am. The body hears the silence around those words. The mind no longer has to create. The creative power is already present. I am. A thought may pass. It passes within imagination. A sensation may arise. It arises within awareness. A distant sound may enter the room. Meaning does not need to be added. Let it be sound. My voice may become indistinct. Let it become sound as well. You do not need to follow. You have understood enough. Imagination is not something that disappears when imagery disappears. The scene may fade, and the state remain. The voice may fade, and expectation remain. Expectation may fade, and the body may simply rest. Rest may become the deepest imaginal confession of all. Nothing to chase, nothing to prove, nothing to see clearly. The fulfilled state does not require a picture gallery. It requires a place within you where it is allowed to feel possible, then familiar, then natural. Tonight, perhaps possibility is enough. You may allow that possibility to become softer. No need to define it. No need to hold it. No need to see it. Only know that imagination is larger than what appears behind closed eyes. It is the inner world from which you continually meet the outer one. And while the outer world sleeps beyond your room, you may quietly choose another inner position without creating one perfect picture at all. Perhaps you see nothing, and still you know. Perhaps you hear nothing, and still you expect differently. Perhaps you feel no great emotion, and still an old meaning has loosened. Perhaps the body is simply heavier now, and that is enough. You do not need a picture of rest. Rest. You do not need a picture of belonging. Stop exiling yourself. You do not need a picture of fulfillment. Allow its meaning to come nearer. You do not need a picture of who you are becoming. You may become familiar with the state before you can describe it. And as the darkness behind your eyes grows deeper, let that darkness become proof of nothing except that your eyes are closed. No failure, no missing image, no test, only darkness, only breath, only being, only imagination quietly continuing beneath the need to watch it. And now I want you to notice something even more subtle than the image itself. The one who is looking. For two people may imagine precisely the same thing, and yet occupy entirely different worlds while doing so. Two people may close their eyes and imagine the same house, the same doorway, the same windows, the same quiet room, the same table, the same garden beyond the glass. One looks at the house with longing. The other looks from belonging. One sees the house and thinks, how wonderful it would be if this were mine. The other experiences the house as the natural setting of life. The image may be almost identical, but the imaginer is not. And it is the imaginer who gives the image its meaning. The image does not determine the state. The identity viewing the image gives it meaning. I want you to understand this deeply, because you can spend a great deal of time improving the picture, while never changing the one who looks at it. You can make the scene brighter. You can add furniture. You can hear voices. You can imagine the exact texture of the door beneath your hand. You can construct every detail beautifully. And still, beneath all that detail, remain the one who says, I hope this becomes mine. Then the picture is not yet possession. It is a beautiful portrait of distance. There is nothing wrong with that. Do not condemn yourself if you discover it. The discovery is useful. It tells you that the work is not in adding more detail. The work is in moving the imaginer. Imagine a man standing before a painting in a gallery. The painting shows a magnificent estate, long fields, tall windows, a path beneath trees. He admires it. He studies it. He can tell you everything about the scene. But he remains before a painting. He is looking at something. Now imagine another man waking in that very estate. He does not stand before it as an object. He looks through one of those windows. The fields are not in front of him as a picture. They extend away from where he stands. The room is around him. Some of the furniture is behind him. He is not admiring the scene as a possibility. He is located within it. That word matters. Located. Where are you located inwardly when you imagine your desire? You need not answer with a place. You may answer with an identity. Am I located in longing? Am I located in waiting? Am I located in trying? Am I located in proving? Or am I located in the quiet consequence of fulfillment? The difference may be almost invisible in the picture, but the body knows it, the mind knows it, the inner conversation knows it, the expectation knows it. The one who is looking always reveals himself through the meaning he gives what is seen. Suppose you imagine money. One person sees a large sum and feels the excitement of rescue. At first this may feel wonderful, but underneath the excitement there is a confession. I am in danger now, and this money must save me. The imagined amount is large. The imaginer remains endangered. Another sees the same amount and perhaps feels almost no excitement. The sum appears ordinary, useful, available. There is no sense that it must rescue being. The imaginer is already inwardly supported. Same symbol, different observer. One sees salvation outside himself. The other sees expression of a state already accepted. Suppose you imagine love. You hear the words you have wanted to hear. One imaginer receives them as though they were water after years in a desert. Thank God. Now I finally know I matter. The scene may be tender, but the imaginer has secretly declared that another person's words create his worth. Another hears the same words and receives them warmly, naturally. He does not become worthy because the words were spoken. The words correspond to an identity in which belonging has already been accepted. Same words, different listener. Suppose you imagine success. You picture the applause, the letter, the recognition, the appointment. One imaginer thinks, now they will see that I was not a failure. The success is being used to erase an identity the imaginer still occupies. Another receives recognition as a natural consequence of contribution. There is gratitude, certainly. There may be joy, but no desperate need to use the event as proof that existence has value. Same achievement, different self. This is why I say the one who is looking is more important than what is seen. You may change the picture 100 times and carry the same observer into every version. A poor observer may enter an imagined palace and still think as one who does not belong there. An abandoned observer may imagine a wedding and still look for signs of departure. An insecure observer may imagine applause and still wonder when the audience will discover the truth. The scenery obeys your wish. The identity remains loyal to the old state. Then you awaken and say, I imagined perfectly. Why do I still feel separated? Because the scene changed. The seer did not. Now, do not try to destroy the old seer. That would create another struggle. Simply become aware of him. Notice the one who looks. You may ask, who am I in this scene? Not, what am I seeing? Who am I while seeing it? This simple question can reveal more than 1,000 added details. If you imagine a loving relationship, who are you while hearing the loving words? Are you the one surprised that anyone could love you? Are you the one afraid that the words may be withdrawn? Are you the one finally obtaining permission to feel worthy? Or are you the one for whom love is received without self-abandonment? If you imagine prosperity, who are you while touching the symbol of prosperity? Are you the one escaping terror? Are you the one who believes this amount must protect you from life? Are you the one who fears losing it before you have even received it? Or are you the one who lives from support and sees wealth as one expression of that state? If you imagine freedom, who are you while looking at the open road? Are you still the prisoner staring at escape? Or have you become the free person deciding where to go? The road may look identical. The psychological world is entirely different. A prisoner stares at an open gate with astonishment. A free man may pass through it without thinking about the gate at all. The gate is everything to the prisoner because it represents the end of captivity. To the free man, it is merely part of the landscape. This is naturalness. Fulfillment gradually removes the dramatic importance of the symbol. You do not worship the doorway once you live in the house. You use it. You do not worship the key. You set it down. You do not worship the road. You travel. And so one clue that you are moving from thinking about fulfillment to thinking from fulfillment is that the symbol begins losing some of its emotional distance. It becomes ordinary enough to belong. This does not mean becoming indifferent. Naturalness is not indifference. You may love what you have deeply. A mother may love her child beyond words and still not spend every moment astonished that the child exists. A musician may treasure an instrument without kneeling before it every morning. A man may deeply appreciate his home while moving through its rooms naturally. Love and naturalness can live together. In fact, naturalness often allows deeper appreciation because desperation no longer consumes attention. You may appreciate without clinging, receive without fearing immediate loss, enjoy without turning enjoyment into proof. So tonight, when you imagine something desired, do not ask first whether the picture is beautiful. Ask whether you belong in it. And belonging does not mean saying words mechanically. It has a particular inward simplicity. Imagine entering a familiar room. You do not ask whether you are allowed to touch the chair. You do not study the floor before taking each step. You do not wonder whether the walls approve of you. You move with unspoken permission. That is the quality I want you to discover. Unspoken permission. The fulfilled state often contains an absence of inner permission seeking. The one who belongs does not continually ask, "May I? May I be loved? May I be secure? May I succeed? May I rest? May I receive? May I call this good mine?" The state itself answers before the question forms. This is where I live. Not physically perhaps, not yet in every outward detail, but psychologically. This is the position I accept. Let the image serve that acceptance. Do not make the image your master. If a particular picture helps you enter, use it. If it leaves you standing outside, change the perspective. Perhaps you have been visualizing yourself in the third person. You see yourself walking through the desired home. You see yourself being congratulated. You see yourself receiving something. There is nothing inherently wrong with this. But notice the relationship. Does the person in the picture feel like you? Or does that person feel like someone you are trying to become? If there is distance, gently enter. Do not watch the hand touch the door. Feel yourself touching it. Do not watch the person hear congratulations. Let the words come toward you. Do not observe someone resting in the desired room. Feel the chair beneath you. Let one object remain behind you. This may help the mind understand that you are no longer looking at the experience from outside. But even here, I want to go deeper. First-person vision alone does not guarantee first-person identity. You may see from your own eyes and still think as the one who is astonished that the dream finally happened. You may still be the former self experiencing a miraculous exception. The perspective has moved visually. The identity has not fully moved. So ask another question. What would be unremarkable if this were truly my life? That question can carry you farther. If the home were yours, what would be ordinary? Perhaps knowing where the light switch is. Perhaps placing a book in a familiar place. Perhaps waking and not needing to look around in amazement. Perhaps hearing the pipes settle in the night and knowing the sound. If the relationship were secure, what would be ordinary? Perhaps silence. Perhaps sitting beside someone without needing to fill every moment. Perhaps hearing, "I'll see you later," without turning the sentence into fear. Perhaps knowing that affection does not need to be proved every hour. If financial support were natural, what would become ordinary? Perhaps opening a letter, perhaps making a plan, perhaps discussing a number without panic entering before reason, perhaps thinking about something entirely unrelated to money. The fulfilled observer notices ordinary consequences. The longing observer notices dramatic symbols. This is why the ordinary may be a more powerful doorway than the spectacular. The spectacular keeps attention fixed upon the event. The ordinary reveals identity after the event has become integrated. Imagine a man who has just received extraordinary news. For the first few minutes, he may be overwhelmed. Hours later, the excitement changes. Days later, perhaps he sits at breakfast thinking about something simple. The news is still true, but it has entered identity. If you want to live from fulfillment, sometimes imagine beyond the celebration, beyond the first announcement, beyond the moment when everyone applauds. What comes after? Who are you on the quiet Tuesday morning after the wish is no longer a wish? That person is very interesting. The world has stopped revolving around the desired event. Life has resumed. But it resumes from another foundation. Perhaps that person pours tea. Perhaps they look through a window. Perhaps they make a list for the day. Perhaps they hear a familiar voice. The scene is ordinary, but the old problem is absent. The absence changes everything. You need not imagine the desired object at all. Imagine the person who no longer organizes life around its absence. This is a profound shift. The old self thinks, when I have money, I will stop worrying about money. So he imagines money. The fulfilled self may be revealed by thinking about something else without financial fear interrupting. The old self thinks, when I am loved, I will stop worrying about being loved. So he imagines declarations of affection. The fulfilled self may be revealed by a peaceful silence in which no reassurance is needed. The old self thinks, when I am successful, I will stop proving myself. So he imagines applause. The fulfilled self may be revealed by doing good work when no one is watching. Do you see? Sometimes the desired state is most clearly revealed in a scene where the desired symbol is absent, because its meaning has become assumed. You do not need to place the sun inside every picture to know it is daytime. Light upon the room implies it. You do not need to display every cause when the consequences are visible. Imagination understands implication. Use this delicately. Perhaps tonight you do not imagine receiving anything. You imagine yourself no longer waiting. That may be enough. Perhaps you do not imagine being praised. You imagine beginning your work without wondering whether praise will come. Perhaps you do not imagine the beloved saying anything. You imagine yourself resting without the old fear of being forgotten. Perhaps you do not imagine a bank balance. You imagine reading a financial document with a steady mind. These are scenes from the identity, rather than scenes about the object. And identity is what I am interested in. The image does not determine the state. The identity viewing the image gives it meaning. Perhaps you can hear that sentence differently now. The same picture can mean lack or possession. The same silence can mean rejection or peace. The same delay can mean failure or simply an interval. The same uncertainty can mean danger or openness. The same empty page can mean incapacity or possibility. The observer gives meaning, and the observer is not fixed. You are not condemned to look through the same eyes inwardly merely because you have done so before. The physical eyes may remain unchanged. The psychological eyes can be educated. You can learn to see a delay without turning it into abandonment. You can see an unfinished matter without turning it into defeat. You can see another person's success without turning it into evidence against yourself. You can see present limitation without making it a prophecy. This is not blind optimism. It is discrimination. You separate fact from the identity that interprets fact. Suppose the fact is, I have not yet received the answer. The old observer says, therefore I am forgotten. The new observer says, the answer has not yet arrived. Stop there. See how much suffering was added by identity. The fact was one sentence. Doubt wrote a chapter. Suppose the fact is, this attempt did not work. The old observer says, therefore I am incapable. The new observer says, this attempt did not produce the intended result. One statement leaves possibility open. The other uses one event to name the person. The event did not contain that identity. The observer supplied it. This is why your inner viewpoint matters, even when you are not performing formal imagination. Every day you stand before the gallery of appearances. Faces, letters, numbers, doors, delays, words, silences. The senses present the pictures. Who is viewing them? That is imagination too. You may look at the same day from a different state and discover that it is not psychologically the same day. The weather may be unchanged. The work may remain. The unanswered question may remain. Yet one person wakes as though life owes him an explanation before he can live. Another wakes knowing that an unanswered question need not become his entire identity. Same morning, different observer. The outer scene does not have absolute power to tell you who is seeing it. You choose the viewer more often than you realize. Perhaps habit chooses first. The old observer appears automatically. Do not be discouraged. You can notice him. Ah, I am looking at this as the abandoned one. Ah, I am looking at this as the one who expects difficulty. Ah, I am looking at this as the one who believes he must prove himself. The recognition creates space. Then ask gently, How would this appear to the one who already lives from the state I desire? Not, how would he force himself to interpret it positively? How would it naturally appear? Perhaps the answer is surprisingly plain. The secure person sees an expense and thinks, I will handle it. The beloved person sees a pause and does not automatically create a tragedy. The capable person encounters difficulty and thinks, I may learn this. The free person meets one closed door and wonders about another direction. The peaceful person sees an unresolved matter and recognizes that thought at midnight may not improve it. No fireworks. Another observer. This is how identity quietly changes perception, and perception influences the next movement. The one who feels rejected may send words designed to extract reassurance. The one who belongs may speak from dignity. The one who feels poor may make decisions entirely from panic. The one who feels supported may still be cautious, but caution is guided by intelligence rather than terror. The one who feels incapable may avoid the opportunity. The one who accepts capability may approach it and learn. So the inner observer is not merely philosophical. It moves through hands, through voice, through posture, through decisions, through what you notice, through what you ignore, through what you permit, through what you refuse. A state becomes visible through thousands of small consequences. You need not manufacture them all consciously. Change the center. Let consequences follow naturally. Imagine a compass. The needle does not need to plan every step of the traveler. It simply gives orientation. The traveler may walk around a stone, pause beside a river, take a different road. The exact movement changes. Orientation remains. Identity is your inward orientation. The image may be one landscape along the journey. Do not confuse the landscape with the compass. You can have a perfect picture and no new orientation, or a simple picture and a profound change of direction. Tonight, choose direction toward belonging, toward support, toward capability, toward freedom, toward the state implied by the wish. You do not have to know every form it will take. The inner compass does not draw every road. It tells you which way you are facing, and you can detect direction through the body. When you imagine your desire, do you lean toward it? Do you feel an inward reaching? Do you hold the breath as though waiting for the picture to become true? This may reveal that you are looking at it from distance. Do not fight the reaching. Simply notice. Then ask, what would happen in the body if I were no longer trying to obtain this scene? Perhaps the breath would continue. Perhaps the shoulders would be less involved. Perhaps attention would become wider. Perhaps the image would feel less bright but more intimate. That is often a good sign. The spectacular dream may become an ordinary room. The great event may become a quiet consequence. The object may become less hypnotic. The identity comes forward. This is why I would not have you measure success by intensity. Sometimes the scene becoming less exciting means you are moving closer to naturalness. The child stares through the shop window at the toy he desperately wants. The owner places the same toy on a shelf without emotional upheaval. To the child, it is distant treasure. To the owner, it belongs to the environment. The object has not changed. Relationship has. Let your desire begin changing relationship, not from indifference, from belonging. Perhaps the words now become softer because you no longer need to study this intellectually. You only need to remember one thing. Notice the one who is looking. If the old observer appears, do not attack him. He has looked through those eyes for a long time. Let him be seen. Then gently move from I hope toward I belong, from I need this to save me toward. This expresses a state I am learning to inhabit. From when will I get there toward how does the world look from there? From I am watching my fulfilled self toward I am seeing through the fulfilled self. The movement may take 1 second, and then perhaps you move back. No matter. Move again when you remember. You are educating perspective. A person learning a new language may accidentally return to the old tongue. That does not erase what has been learned. Each return builds familiarity. So tonight, if you picture the house, do not remain across the road. And if you discover yourself across the road, smile inwardly. You know the way now. cross, enter. Then perhaps go farther than before. Do not stand inside staring at the walls in disbelief. Sit. Let the house become less important. Hear a distant clock. Feel the chair. Think of tomorrow. Perhaps wonder what you will have for breakfast. Now the house is no longer the object of desire. It is the assumed setting. This is living from. Perhaps your scene concerns love. Do not remain frozen in the moment of hearing, I love you. Let the scene continue for a few seconds. Perhaps later you are both quiet. Nothing needs to be said. The silence is comfortable. Now love is not an announcement. It is atmosphere. Perhaps your scene concerns success. Do not remain at the moment of applause. Let the applause end. Imagine returning to the work with calm dignity. Now success is not an event. It is identity. Perhaps your scene concerns freedom. Do not remain at the opened gate. Walk far enough that you stop turning around to check whether it is still open. Now freedom is no longer escape. It is life. This is the imaginal shift. The image becomes less important as the self becomes more established. And perhaps now, as sleep comes closer, you can release even the image. You do not need the house. You do not need the letter. You do not need the voice. You do not need the road. Ask only, who is listening to me now? Is it the one desperately waiting for life to begin? Or can it be, even for this breath, the one who already feels permitted to live? Let the question be answered without words. Perhaps the body settles. That is an answer. Perhaps nothing changes. Still, you have asked from awareness. Let the next breath belong to the one who is not standing outside. Let the next sound be heard by the one who does not need it to prove anything. Let the darkness behind closed eyes be seen by the one who is not waiting for a picture to rescue him. The world can remain quiet. The desired scene can disappear. The observer remains, and the observer may choose where he stands. Perhaps now he stands within belonging. Perhaps within support. Perhaps within quiet possibility. Perhaps only within the simple knowledge that he no longer has to look at every circumstance from the identity of absence. That is enough. The image does not determine the state. The identity viewing the image gives it meaning. And when the identity changes, the same world begins speaking another language. A door becomes possibility instead of exclusion. Silence becomes space instead of rejection. An unfinished road becomes movement instead of failure. The future becomes open instead of threatening. The night becomes rest instead of waiting. Even sleep changes meaning. The old observer says, I am going to sleep before I have the answer. The new observer may simply say nothing. He rests. He no longer requires the night to prove that he belongs to tomorrow. He lets the body become heavy. He lets the images fade. He lets the desired object move out of sight. Because possession does not require constant staring. Belonging does not require constant proof. And the one who is looking has begun to understand that he was never merely watching a world. He was always giving that world meaning from the state he occupied. Tonight, you may choose another state. Then close your eyes inside it, and let the one who looks finally become more important than anything that could possibly be seen. And now I want you to see something that may completely change the way you understand the phrase, live as if. For you have never needed to learn how to live as if. You have been doing it all your life. The question has never been whether you know how to assume. The question is what you have been assuming. You have lived from invisible premises long before anyone gave you a name for them. You have walked into rooms expecting certain responses. You have opened letters expecting certain news. You have gone to sleep anticipating certain tomorrows. You have heard a pause in another person's voice and given that pause a meaning before any explanation was offered. You were living as if. You simply did not call it imagination. A person who expects rejection is already living as if rejection were true before anyone rejects them. They may enter a conversation cautiously. They may speak less freely. They may study every expression. They may interpret neutrality as disapproval. They may withdraw before the other person has had an opportunity to come closer. Nothing visible has yet confirmed the assumption, but the assumption is already shaping experience. The future has been permitted to enter the present through expectation. This is living as if. A person who expects difficulty tomorrow may begin suffering tomorrow tonight. The body tightens while lying safely in bed. The mind rehearses problems that have not occurred. Conversations are constructed. Obstacles are invented. Responses are prepared. The person feels exhausted by a day that has not yet happened. And if you ask them whether imagination affects the body, they might say they do not know. Yet their body is answering an imaginary tomorrow at that very moment. They know how to imagine. They know how to live as if. They have simply practiced the unwanted state so naturally that it no longer feels imaginal. It feels like realism. This is one of the great disguises of assumption. An assumption repeated often enough begins calling itself observation. You say, I am only being realistic. But examine the statement carefully. Perhaps you are reporting something that has already happened. That is observation. Or perhaps you are predicting that because it happened before, it will happen again. That is assumption. Perhaps someone disappointed you once. That is history. You decide that people always disappoint you. That is assumption. Perhaps one opportunity closed. That is an event. You conclude that opportunity is never available to you. That is assumption. Perhaps money has been difficult. That is an experience. You say, money will always be difficult for me. That is assumption. You have crossed quietly from description into prophecy. And because the crossing happened within thought, you may never have noticed it. The mind says, I am simply telling the truth. But whose truth? The truth of what has been, or the assumed truth of what must be? There is a vast difference. The past can tell you what occurred. It cannot, by itself, tell you what must occur next. You provide that extension. You take yesterday in your hand and stretch it across tomorrow. You call the extension certainty, and then you live from it. This is living as if. So when I tell you to live as if your wish were fulfilled, I am not asking you to acquire some strange new faculty. I am asking you to recognize the faculty you already use and become conscious of its direction. You know how to anticipate. You know how to inwardly rehearse. You know how to expect. You know how to give meaning to silence. You know how to enter a future before it arrives. You have done all of these things. Now become selective. That is the art. Not learning assumption, choosing assumption. There is enormous relief in understanding this because many people make acting as if into a performance. They imagine they must become an actor from morning until night. They think they must behave in ways that convince themselves and others that something already exists physically when it does not. They begin asking, what would I wear? What would I buy? How would I walk? What would I tell people? Then the practice becomes exhausting because they are performing a visible role instead of occupying an invisible premise. I do not mean theatrical behavior. I mean inner causation. The most powerful assumptions in your life are usually not performed at all. They are taken for granted. A person who expects to be welcomed does not necessarily enter the room proclaiming confidence. They simply do not prepare for rejection. A person who believes they can learn does not need to boast of intelligence. They approach the unfamiliar task without turning confusion into humiliation. A person who feels securely loved does not need to announce it continually. They do not examine every silence for evidence of departure. The assumption appears through what is unnecessary. No performance, no strain, a quiet premise. This is why living as if can become deeply restful rather than exhausting. You are not adding an artificial character. You are removing an unconscious one. Perhaps you have unconsciously acted as if life is always about to become difficult. Notice how much effort that role requires. You monitor, you anticipate, you prepare, you hold back joy so that disappointment will not surprise you. You examine good news for hidden problems. You receive something beautiful and immediately wonder how long it will last. You call this caution. But perhaps it is an assumption. The assumption says, good things are unstable. Then you live accordingly. You cannot simply enjoy the present because part of you is already living as if loss is approaching. The loss may never come, yet the body has experienced many rehearsals of it. You have paid emotional interest on a debt that did not exist. Consider that. How often have you suffered in advance? How often have you grieved something before losing it? How often have you defended yourself against words no one eventually spoke? How often have you lived through imagined failure, only to discover that the actual event unfolded differently? This should tell you something important. Your ability to give emotional reality to an unseen condition is already highly developed. The faculty is not weak. It may be undisciplined. That is very different. Suppose tonight you worry that you are not good at imagining. Yet if you have ever lain awake because of an event that had not yet happened, you have demonstrated imagination beautifully. You gave an unseen possibility enough reality to alter breathing, enough reality to disturb sleep, enough reality to change the muscles of the face, enough reality to produce inner conversations. You do not need more imaginative power. You need another imaginative allegiance. You must decide which unseen state deserves your life. That is the real question. Not, can I live as if? You already can. What shall I live as if? Shall I live as if the past owns tomorrow? Shall I live as if another person's silence is a verdict on my worth? Shall I live as if one closed road means all roads are closed? Shall I live as if uncertainty must become danger? Shall I live as if the thing I desire has the right to remain psychologically outside me until the senses approve? Or shall I select another premise? You do not have to select the most extravagant premise you can imagine. Choose one that expresses the state you truly wish to inhabit. Perhaps the old premise is, I must prepare for disappointment. The new premise need not be, nothing disappointing can ever happen to me. That may feel artificial and unnecessary. Perhaps it is simply, I do not need to disappoint myself in advance. Feel the intelligence in that. You do not know every future event. You are not claiming to. You are refusing to rehearse pain before pain exists. That is a new assumption. Perhaps the old premise is, people always leave. The new premise need not be, everyone remains forever. Human relationships change. People have their own journeys. Perhaps the deeper premise is, another person's movement does not erase my capacity to belong and be loved. Now identity has changed without demanding control over anyone. Perhaps the old premise is, nothing ever works for me. Instead of shouting the opposite, begin more honestly. The past is not qualified to decide every form my future can take. That sentence opens the future. You have removed the old verdict. Sometimes this is the first act of conscious assumption. Not immediately installing a magnificent future, but refusing to make the old one compulsory. The future becomes unwritten again, and an unwritten future contains more freedom than a beautiful affirmation spoken over an inwardly fixed conclusion. Perhaps that is what you need tonight. Not certainty that everything will happen exactly as imagined. Freedom from the certainty that it cannot. Let the future breathe. You have held it too tightly inside yesterday's shape. Release it. You do not need to know its complete form in order to stop condemning it. This is living as if from another state. Suppose you desire a loving relationship. The old way says, I will live as if I am unwanted until someone proves otherwise. You may never say those words consciously, but you live them. You expect little. You monitor affection. You compare yourself. You become nervous when communication changes. You read absence as judgment. You wait for another person to certify that you may finally stop being the unwanted self. This is an assumption being lived. Then someone tells you, act as if you are loved. You may think this means pretending a relationship exists. No, it may begin much more quietly. Stop consulting imagined rejection before every act. Stop asking an absent person to decide how worthy you are tonight. Let silence exist without turning it into a personal verdict. Permit yourself to occupy belonging before another person performs the ceremony of granting it. You have shifted premise. Perhaps outwardly you do nothing unusual. No one sees the practice. But inwardly you are no longer living as if rejection has already happened. That is enormous. Suppose you desire financial improvement. The old assumption may be so habitual that every transaction carries the same meaning. There will not be enough. Something else will go wrong. I cannot get ahead. Even while no immediate crisis exists, the person lives as if crisis is inevitable. An unexpected letter appears, and panic arrives before the envelope is opened. A necessary purchase arises, and the future contracts. A new possibility appears, and the first thought is why it will fail. This is living as if scarcity has already won tomorrow. Then someone says, act as if you are financially secure. The person may misunderstand and think they must spend money they do not have. That is not assumption. That is behavior attempting to imitate a symbol. The state is deeper. Perhaps financial security begins inwardly, as the assumption that a problem can be met without becoming your identity. You can look at numbers, you can plan, you can save, you can seek better work, you can make responsible choices, but you no longer live as if every number carries a sentence against your future. The actions may become wiser precisely because panic is not making every decision. You have changed what you are acting from, not necessarily what the action looks like. This distinction will save you from much foolishness. Living from fulfillment is not imitating the outer behavior you imagine a fulfilled person would display. It is adopting the inner premise from which their behavior would naturally arise. A wealthy man and a poor man may both decline an unnecessary purchase. The action is identical. One may decline it because he is terrified, the other because he sees no reason to waste resources. Same action, different state. A beloved person and an abandoned person may both spend an evening alone. One experiences solitude, the other experiences rejection. Same room, different assumption. A confident person and an insecure person may both admit, I do not know. One experiences honesty, the other experiences humiliation. Same words, different identity. This is why you cannot determine state merely by appearance. You must know the inner premise. The state precedes meaning. Meaning clothes circumstance, and meaning shapes experience. You have always lived this way. Perhaps you entered a room where you knew everyone well. You assumed welcome without thinking about it. Your body behaved differently. You did not calculate where to place your hands. You did not rehearse each word. You did not study every face for permission. You lived as if you belonged, because belonging was assumed. No technique, no mental ritual. Natural assumption. Now imagine entering another room where you feared judgment. Suddenly the body changed. You became more aware of yourself. Every silence seemed larger. Every expression became important. You were living as if you were being judged. Perhaps no one was judging you. The inner assumption produced a different world inside the same kind of room. So you already know the sensation of assumptions becoming invisible through familiarity. The goal is not to force a desired state until it feels unnatural forever. The goal is to become sufficiently familiar with it that it begins operating with the same quietness as the old assumption once did. At first, the new state may feel deliberate. That is natural. You are choosing something consciously that was previously chosen by habit. The old assumption has years of rehearsal. Do not be surprised that it enters quickly. If you have expected difficulty for 20 years, one peaceful evening may not make ease completely automatic, but one peaceful evening introduces another possibility, then another return, and another. Eventually, what once required remembering begins feeling ordinary. This is how assumptions become background. Do not ask whether the new state feels perfectly natural tonight. Ask whether you can inhabit it for this moment without violence. Perhaps only one breath. Can you breathe as if nothing is required to go wrong in the next breath? Notice how modest that is. You are not commanding the next 10 years, only this breath. Nothing is required to go wrong now. Let the breath pass. Another. For this moment, you do not have to anticipate rejection. Another. For this moment, the future does not need to be written from fear. Another. You are practicing an assumption at the scale where the body can receive it. The mind often wants enormous declarations because enormous declarations feel important. But natural assumption may enter through very small doors. Suppose you have lived as if tomorrow will be difficult. Tonight, instead of commanding tomorrow to be perfect, simply leave it blank. Do not rehearse it. Can you feel how radical that is? The old state wanted to fill every blank space with trouble. Now you allow blankness. You do not know. And because you do not know, difficulty is no longer automatically granted the role. An unwritten morning, an unopened curtain, a road before footprints. Let tomorrow be like that. You need not populate it tonight. Sleep is allowed to arrive before tomorrow receives a story. This may be your first conscious act of living from trust, not predicting a wonderful day, simply refusing to manufacture a terrible one. Trust can begin as non-interference. Likewise, perhaps you have lived as if something good must be lost. The moment you receive affection, part of you moves to its ending. The moment you experience success, you imagine its collapse. The moment peace arrives, you ask what will disturb it. You are so accustomed to the assumption of impermanence that enjoyment itself becomes a warning signal. Too good, too peaceful, too easy. Something must happen. Must? Notice the word. Who said it must? Past experience, a family habit, an old disappointment. A protective voice that believes surprise can be prevented by anxiety. None of these are laws, they are patterns, and patterns can disguise themselves as laws when repeated long enough. Tonight, you do not need to promise yourself that nothing good will ever end. Everything in the visible world changes form. Instead, stop assuming that the possibility of change makes present good unsafe to receive. You may enjoy without rehearsing loss. You may love without practicing grief in advance. You may rest without imagining what will wake you. You may receive without immediately asking when it will be taken. That is another way to live as if good can be experienced without punishment. Can you allow that? Perhaps the phrase touches something old. Do not force it. Just notice. How often have you treated joy as though it created a debt? If I become too hopeful, something will happen. If I relax, I will be caught unprepared. If I trust, I will be foolish. If I expect good, disappointment will hurt more. And so you choose disappointment in advance, as protection against possible disappointment later. What a costly protection. You suffer certainly to avoid suffering possibly. You live the unwanted event now, so that it cannot surprise you later. This is imagination in service of fear. And I do not ask you to hate that mechanism. It may have been trying to protect you. Perhaps some experience taught you that vigilance felt safer than openness. Thank the old intelligence for what it tried to do. Then educate it. I can respond to difficulty if difficulty comes. I do not need to live it twice, once in imagination, and once in fact, if fact ever demands it. Let tomorrow carry its own weight. Tonight need not carry tomorrow as well. This is why sleep is such a perfect setting for learning conscious assumption. Sleep asks you to surrender prediction. You cannot consciously supervise the next several hours. The moment you truly sleep, vigilance ends, and yet life continues. The heart continues. Breathing continues. The world does not require conscious observation to remain in motion. Every night you already perform an act of trust. You relinquish control. Perhaps you never thought of sleep this way. You lie down and allow consciousness to withdraw from the visible room. You cannot guard every possession. You cannot solve every problem. You cannot monitor every person you love. For hours, you release the world, and morning comes. So tonight, let that natural surrender teach you something about assumption. You do not need to hold your desired state through force. You may select it and then sleep. You may say inwardly, "This is the premise I prefer to inhabit," and then allow the words to disappear. The old assumption may whisper after that. Do not panic. A whisper is not occupancy unless you move into it. Suppose you decide to stop living as if rejection is inevitable. Then a thought appears. But what if they reject me? You do not need to destroy the thought. You only need not reorganize yourself around it. The question may be present. The assumption need not be accepted. A bird may cross the sky without changing the sky's direction. The thought crosses. You remain. This is another misconception I want to remove. Conscious assumption does not mean controlling every thought. Thoughts are movements. Assumptions are deeper orientations. Many thoughts may pass through one state. A secure person can experience fear. A loved person can experience sadness. A capable person can momentarily doubt. The appearance of an opposite thought does not automatically reverse identity. Otherwise, no state could ever become stable. You would spend your life jumping identities, with every sentence in the mind. Natural identity is broader than a passing thought. So if you choose another assumption tonight, and a familiar fear appears, do not say, I have ruined it. You are learning not to bow to every mental visitor. The old assumption may speak loudly, because it is practiced. Volume is not authority. Familiarity is not truth. Repetition is not destiny. The old voice may know your name. That does not make it the owner of your future. You can hear it and remain inwardly elsewhere. This is living as if with maturity, not acting blindly, not suppressing reality, not demanding permanent emotional perfection, selecting a premise and returning to it. Again and again, until the return becomes less necessary because the state becomes home. What premise have you been returning to without realizing it? Perhaps things are always harder for me. Perhaps I must prove my worth. Perhaps people cannot be trusted. Perhaps whenever I relax something goes wrong. Perhaps I am always behind. Perhaps everyone else knows what they are doing except me. Perhaps I get close and then lose everything. Listen without shame. These are not confessions of essence. They are assumptions rehearsed so often that they acquired your voice. You may hear one and think, that is simply how I am. But no, it is how you have been living as if. And anything you have been living as if can become visible as a state. Once visible, it becomes selectable. You can ask, is this premise worthy of another night of my life? That is a beautiful question. Not, is it objectively impossible that something difficult may happen? Difficulty may happen. The question is, does this premise deserve my habitation? Does I always lose deserve another night? Does I am always overlooked deserve another night? Does nothing works deserve another night? Does I must remain afraid to remain safe deserve another night? You are not required to continue an assumption simply because it has history. Age does not grant a state permanent citizenship. You may retire it, not through combat, through non-renewal. Imagine that every assumption is a lease upon your attention. The old one arrives each evening expecting another signature. You have signed it automatically for years. Yes, another day of anticipating failure. Yes, another week of expecting abandonment. Yes, another season of assuming insufficiency. Tonight the paper arrives. You read it, and perhaps for the first time, you do not sign. No dramatic tearing, no fire. You simply leave the line blank. The old agreement expires through lack of consent. I like that image, because transformation is often quieter than people expect. You do not always need to declare war on an old state. Sometimes you simply stop renewing it. You stop completing the sentence. You stop imagining the same ending. You stop using one event as proof of the entire future. You let the old assumption miss one meal, then another. Its strength begins to change because occupancy is nourishment. A state you do not continually feed becomes less natural. And what do you place in its stead? Not necessarily a grand opposite, perhaps a more spacious premise. Life can surprise me in ways I do not yet know. There are possibilities I cannot see from here. I am allowed to meet tomorrow without rehearsing defeat. My history does not contain every available future. I can be supported in ways the present mind has not calculated. I can belong without making every person a judge. These are not guarantees of specific events. They are new positions. They stop the old self from writing the whole script in advance. And then, from that openness, you may gradually occupy the fulfilled state more specifically. But do not hurry. This section of the night is about recognizing that you are already skilled at assumption. You have been living ahead of evidence for years. Fear does it. Worry does it. Self-doubt does it. Hope does it. Confidence does it. Expectation does it. The faculty is neutral. You are the chooser. Perhaps you remember a time when you walked into a situation certain that something would go badly. Before anything occurred, you had already rehearsed the identity you would occupy. The misunderstood one, the overlooked one, the embarrassed one, the one who never gets the opportunity. Then every small event was interpreted through that role. A neutral comment confirmed it. A delay confirmed it. Someone looking away confirmed it. The state became a collector of evidence. This is another reason assumptions feel self-confirming. A state knows what evidence it prefers. The jealous state notices what jealousy can use. The rejected state notices absence. The prosperous state may notice opportunity, skill, relationship, usefulness, and solution. The capable state notices what can be learned. The loved state notices mutuality. State directs attention, not perfectly, but powerfully. So when you select another assumption, you are not merely repeating words, you are changing the organizing principle by which experience is noticed and interpreted. This can change actions without you planning them all. You may suddenly say something differently. A possibility you once ignored may seem relevant. A conversation you avoided may feel manageable. A boundary may become obvious. A solution may occur to you, not because you forced every event, because the observer changed. The world now offers different meaning to another state. This is why living as if is not a costume worn over the old self. A costume changes appearance. Assumption changes the observer. Do not dress fear as confidence. Move inwardly from fear toward the state where confidence becomes less performative. Do not smile while inwardly rehearsing rejection and call that living as if. Allow the premise of rejection itself to loosen. Do not imitate the spending of someone wealthy while inwardly feeling terrified. Let support become the premise. Then allow practical behavior to arise intelligently. Do not mimic the gestures of someone successful. Ask what success has ended inside them. Perhaps the need to prove. Perhaps the need to ask permission. Perhaps the belief that every mistake is fatal. Enter there. The fulfilled state often changes what you no longer need to do. And tonight, one of the first things you no longer need to do is live as if the unwanted future has already been decided. You can stop rehearsing it, not because you have proved the opposite, because it has not earned certainty. Let uncertainty become neutral again. How strange that we often reserve uncertainty only for good. You say, I don't know whether the good thing will happen, but concerning the bad thing you suddenly become a prophet. I know how this ends. Do you? Or have you practiced the ending? Let the same uncertainty you use against hope be used against fear. Perhaps the feared event will not happen. Perhaps the situation will unfold differently. Perhaps your future contains variables unavailable to present reason. Perhaps the person you will be tomorrow will see an option the person you are tonight cannot yet see. Do not worship your prediction. You are imagining. Once you know that, you can imagine with greater love. Perhaps now you are becoming drowsier. Good. You do not need to carry all of this into memory. Let only the essential understanding remain. You already know how to live as if. You have done it with fear. You have done it with worry. You have done it with expectation. You have done it with the past. Now you may do it consciously. Not forcefully, consciously. The old assumption says, tomorrow will repeat yesterday. You may leave tomorrow unwritten. The old assumption says, silence means rejection. You may let silence be silence. The old assumption says, good must be followed by loss. You may enjoy what is present without practicing grief. The old assumption says, uncertainty means something is wrong. You may let uncertainty mean that something is not yet known. Already the world inside you has become more spacious. No new physical evidence was required. Only a new relationship with assumption. This is the power you have always carried. You did not discover imagination tonight. You discovered that much of what you called inevitability was imagination wearing familiar clothes. And familiar clothes may be removed before sleep. Let the old coat lie somewhere beyond the bed. The coat of expecting trouble. The coat of preparing for rejection. The coat of anticipating loss. You do not need to burn them. Just do not sleep in them tonight. The body is allowed to lie here without wearing tomorrow's difficulty. Feel what that means. You are physically in this room, not in tomorrow. You are physically upon this bed, not inside the conversation you fear. You are breathing this breath, not the breath of some future disappointment. The senses themselves may help bring you out of the unwanted assumption. This moment is simpler than the story. The bed, the room, the darkness, the voice, the breath. The future has not yet entered. Do not invite it wearing the old costume. Let it remain outside until its hour. and when its hour arrives, you will meet it then, from whatever state you have practiced becoming. For now, choose what deserves to accompany you into sleep, not a complicated scene, perhaps only an inner permission. I need not expect the old ending tonight. Let that be enough. I need not expect the old ending tonight. Not because you know every new ending, because the old one is no longer entitled to certainty. Perhaps the body understands this as release. The future opens, not brilliantly, quietly, like a page left blank upon a desk after the writer has gone to sleep. No sentence must be written tonight. No tragedy, no triumph, no explanation. The page can remain blank, and you can rest knowing that blankness is not emptiness. It is possibility not yet reduced to yesterday. This is freedom, to stop living as if the old story were compulsory. Tomorrow may reveal its own scenes. You do not need to pre-live them. You have pre-lived enough. You have imagined enough disappointments that never came, enough arguments never spoken, enough endings never reached. Let imagination become kinder now. Let it become quieter. Perhaps instead of showing you what tomorrow must contain, it simply gives you a different self with which to meet it. A self less prepared for rejection, less loyal to difficulty, less convinced that good must leave, less interested in predicting. That may be all you need tonight. The old self acted as if danger were always approaching. The new state does not need to act. It can simply stop assuming danger without evidence. The old self lived as if life were an examination. The new state may allow 1 hour without grading itself. The old self lived as if fulfillment were far away. The new state may allow its meaning to become inwardly near. No performance, no audience, no effort to look different, only premise, only orientation, only what you accept before evidence speaks. And as the night becomes deeper, perhaps you can feel how gentle conscious assumption can be. You do not have to pretend. You do not have to convince. You do not have to become someone unnatural. You are merely becoming aware of the invisible as if you have always lived from. Then, quietly, you choose again. Not this old ending, not this old identity, not this old certainty. Another premise may live here. Another way of meeting tomorrow may live here. Another version of you may become natural here. You already know how. You have been practicing assumption all your life. Tonight, for perhaps the first time, you are simply deciding what is worthy of being assumed. And now, as this night has carried you farther from effort and closer to the quiet place from which all true assumption begins, I want to remove one final misunderstanding from you. You do not have to pretend anymore. Perhaps the words live as if have sometimes sounded like an instruction to become an actor. Perhaps you thought you were being asked to walk through the world pretending that visible circumstances were different from what they appeared to be, to smile when you wished to cry, to claim possession of what was not physically in your hands, to deny a difficulty when a difficulty plainly stood before you. That is not what I mean. I do not ask you to deceive yourself. I ask you to cease allowing appearances to deceive you about who you must be. There is a difference so enormous between these two things that once you see it, the strain begins to leave the whole practice. Pretending says, I must make the outside look fulfilled so that I can convince myself. Assumption says, I choose the inward identity from which fulfillment would be natural, even while the outside completes its own sequence. Pretending is concerned with appearances. Assumption is concerned with being. Pretending asks, how should I behave so that I look like someone who has received? Assumption asks, who am I when I am no longer defining myself by not having received? These are not the same. The person pretending may become exhausted because every hour becomes a performance. Every action must be inspected. Every word must be corrected. Every emotion must be hidden. Every circumstance that contradicts the performance feels dangerous. But the person who understands assumption does not need to perform all day. They can see an unpaid account and still know that an account is not a definition of being. They can experience silence from another person without immediately becoming the abandoned self. They can encounter a closed door without making the closed door the final authority upon possibility. They can feel fear without calling fear their permanent identity. They can experience disappointment without declaring that disappointment is the law of their life. This is not pretending. It is discrimination. The senses tell you what appears to be true of a circumstance now. They do not possess the authority to tell you the only identity from which you may meet that circumstance. A thermometer may tell you the temperature. It does not tell you who you are. A ledger may tell you a balance. It does not tell you what possibilities your life contains. Another person's present opinion may tell you something about their present opinion. It does not pronounce the eternal value of your being. A failure may tell you that one attempt did not produce what was intended. It cannot speak the sentence, "Therefore you are a failure," unless you lend it your voice. You have lent appearances your voice many times. Tonight, you may take it back. This is what the work has always been about. Not forcing the world to say what you want before you can rest. Resting deeply enough in another identity that the world is no longer permitted to name you with every passing condition. If you desire love, you do not need to wander about pretending that a particular relationship physically exists when it does not. You begin by refusing to make yourself an exile from love. You cease using another person's response as the creator of your lovability. You become familiar with belonging. Then you can meet relationship differently. If you desire prosperity, you need not imitate extravagance or spend foolishly to prove abundance. You begin by withdrawing identity from scarcity. You can look directly at practical facts while refusing to let fear become your name. You become familiar with support, capability, sufficiency, intelligent movement. Then money becomes something you deal with rather than something before which being kneels. If you desire success, you need not announce achievements you have not yet made. You cease calling yourself incapable because the desired recognition has not arrived. You begin working from usefulness, contribution, dignity, expectation. You stop asking each attempt to certify your right to continue. If you desire freedom, you need not deny the existence of every present limitation. You stop giving the limitation permanent residence in imagination. You begin thinking beyond the wall. You become interested in what life means after the wall. And slowly the old prison ceases to occupy the center of consciousness. Do you see? Living as if is not an outward masquerade. It is an inward relocation. You were standing in one room and interpreting everything from there. The room was called waiting, or rejection, or struggle, or insufficiency, or fear. Then you discovered another room. Perhaps you entered it only for a few seconds at first. Perhaps it was called belonging, perhaps support, perhaps freedom, perhaps capability, perhaps peace, perhaps simply fulfillment. And because the old room was familiar, you wandered back many times. That does not matter. You found the door. Once a man knows there is another room in the house, he can no longer honestly say that the first room is the whole building. This is what awareness has done for you. You can recognize a state as a state. That recognition already loosens its claim to permanence. The old self may still speak tomorrow. Let it speak. It has spoken for years. Do not be surprised that it remembers its lines. But you no longer need to mistake familiarity for truth. The old voice says, "Nothing has changed." You may answer nothing. The old voice says, "Look at the evidence." You may look at the evidence without becoming it. The old voice says, "You are still waiting." And perhaps you suddenly realize that waiting is something you are doing inwardly, not something you are forced to be. Then you stop. Not forever through force. For this moment. That is enough. You have been trying, perhaps, to become the fulfilled person by accumulating more techniques, more concentration, more emotional intensity. But consider what fulfillment itself would remove. The fulfilled person would not need to spend every hour trying to become fulfilled. There is something almost humorous in this once you see it. You cannot reach the state of no longer trying by trying with greater violence. You cannot arrive at inward possession while making possession the reward for perfect mental labor. At some point, the labor must end. At some point, you must sit down inside the house. At some point, you must stop turning the key after the door is already open. At some point, the traveler must stop asking whether the train has arrived after he is already looking through its window. At some point, the gardener must stop digging. At some point, the unanswered question must be allowed to sleep. Tonight can be that point. Not because every outer circumstance must have changed before morning. Not because I promise you a miracle before the sun rises. Not because you have performed the method perfectly, but because there comes a moment in every true assumption when the inner argument simply becomes unnecessary. You have decided where you live. Then live there quietly. You do not have to announce it. You do not have to defend it. You do not have to prove it to the world. You do not even have to feel it with perfect consistency. You return when you remember. And when you forget, you do not punish yourself. The fulfilled identity would not spend its life punishing itself for imperfect fulfillment. There is a contradiction there. So be gentle. Perhaps tomorrow you wake and the first thought is the old thought. Nothing is ruined. Perhaps fear appears. Nothing is ruined. Perhaps you look at circumstances and feel disappointed. Nothing is ruined. You are not building a fragile palace of glass that shatters when one doubtful thought touches it. You are learning residence. A person may leave home in the morning, wander through difficult streets, become tired, become angry, become confused, and still know where home is. The difficulty of the street does not erase the address. Let the chosen state become like that. Home. Not a prison in which you must remain emotionally perfect. Home. Something remembered. Something returned to. Something gradually becoming familiar enough that the return happens naturally. This is persistence without strain. I have spoken often of persistence, and people sometimes imagine that persistence means emotional force. They picture someone holding an image with clenched teeth, refusing to move, repeating words until exhaustion. But that is not the persistence I want for you tonight. True persistence may be as gentle as refusing to change your address merely because the weather changed. Rain comes, you still live there. A difficult conversation comes, you still live there. An uncertain day comes, you still live there. A temporary disappointment comes, you still live there. You may feel the weather, you may respond to the weather, but you do not hand the weather the deed to the house. Your state belongs to you. This is why you do not need to convert every circumstance into evidence. A bird crosses the sky. It does not need to be a sign. Someone says a pleasant word. You do not have to make it proof. Someone says an unpleasant word. You do not have to make that proof either. A delay occurs. Let it be a delay. A coincidence occurs. Let it be a coincidence if you wish. You do not need to live with a magnifying glass in your hand. The fulfilled self is not an investigator searching the world for confirmation. Confirmation is what the waiting self demands. The settled self can allow events to be events. It knows where it stands inwardly. This releases enormous energy. Imagine how much attention has been consumed by asking whether things are working. You imagine at night, then wake and inspect. You choose a state, then inspect. You feel peaceful for an hour, then inspect whether the peace produced something. You become confident, then inspect whether someone noticed. You stop checking for 10 minutes, then check whether not checking worked. The watcher has found a way to survive every technique. Tonight, let the watcher become tired. It has done enough. There is no experiment to supervise. There is no inner laboratory. There is only a human being permitted to rest in a chosen identity. And perhaps the deepest evidence that you have begun living from fulfillment is that you no longer demand evidence every moment. You no longer need to know what every event means. You no longer need to predict the bridge. You no longer need to measure the distance between this night and some imagined future morning. You have left the ruler on the table. Distance is no longer your occupation. This is what the phrase means when I say, I no longer wait. I do not mean that time has ceased. Some things still unfold in time. A seed does not become a tree because you deny the calendar. A journey may contain miles. A skill may require practice. A human relationship may unfold through conversation and mutual choice. The body lives in sequence. Life contains process, but waiting need not become identity while process continues. I no longer wait means I no longer take my name from the interval. I do not call myself incomplete merely because a process is incomplete. I do not call myself unwanted merely because love has not taken the exact form I prefer. I do not call myself poor in being because a financial condition is still developing. I do not call myself incapable because recognition has not arrived. I do not call myself trapped in essence because an external limitation has not yet moved. Time may still contain events. Identity does not have to kneel before time. And then comes the second part. I live from fulfillment. This is not a spell. Do not turn it into one. It is a direction, a reminder of residence. I live from fulfillment. That means I ask what becomes natural from the state. It means I permit the consequence inwardly before the senses have completed every form. It means I stop asking the absence to define me. It means I meet what is here as one who has accepted another inward position. Some days this will feel clear. Other days it may feel like a very small decision. Both are enough. Perhaps fulfillment tomorrow looks like not sending the anxious letter. Perhaps it looks like sending the necessary letter without fear. Perhaps it looks like making a practical plan. Perhaps it looks like resting instead of planning. Perhaps it looks like saying yes. Perhaps saying no. You cannot create a list of fulfilled behaviors that applies to every moment. The state is living. It will express according to circumstance. Your work is not to imitate its outer appearance. Your work is to become familiar with its center. And tonight the center is quiet. There is nothing more to prove. You have heard enough. You have imagined enough. You have examined enough. Even if some parts of these words passed you by while you drifted in and out of attention, nothing important has been lost. The lesson was never hidden in one sentence. It has been moving beneath all of them. Stop standing outside. Stop making the symbol the source. Stop treating imagination as a picture alone. Notice the one who looks. Recognize the assumptions already being lived. Return to I am before the old description. Meet the person implied by the wish. Look from fulfillment rather than toward it. Notice what becomes unnecessary after the matter is settled. And eventually, stop working so hard at being the one who has arrived. Arrive inwardly enough to rest. Perhaps that is all living as if finally means. Resting from the identity of absence. Not pretending. Resting. Can you feel the difference? Pretending is active. It requires memory. I must remember the role. I must remember how the fulfilled person walks. I must remember what they would say. I must remember not to look worried. I must remember to feel confident. Rest has no such requirements. The fulfilled self may simply forget to perform the old state. That is much more interesting. Imagine that tomorrow you go half an hour without thinking of the old problem. You suddenly notice, for 30 minutes I was simply living. Do not immediately turn this into a sign. Enjoy the ordinary miracle of attention returning to life. Perhaps another day you hear something that once would have triggered a long inner argument, and the argument lasts only a minute. Again, no ceremony. Perhaps a week from now you notice that you did not ask when all morning. Perhaps one day you receive good news, and, instead of feeling that your identity has finally been granted, you feel something quieter. Of course, not arrogance, recognition. Something in you has become familiar with the state. The outer event no longer introduces a stranger. It meets someone already acquainted with its meaning. That is the beauty of assumption. You do not become shocked by your own good. You become capable of receiving it. You let fulfillment become normal enough that you need not sabotage it merely because it feels unfamiliar. Many people can desire better than they can receive. Desire is familiar. Receiving exposes them to a new identity. Then they become nervous. Can I keep it? Do I deserve it? What if it leaves? Perhaps your nightly work has been preparing you not merely to obtain, but to receive without fear. To allow good to belong. To allow rest to belong. To allow love to belong. To allow support to belong. To allow freedom to belong. Not because any specific circumstance is guaranteed to obey a timetable, but because you no longer make estrangement from these states your permanent home. You become available to them, and availability is quiet. An open door does not shout. It is simply not closed. Perhaps tonight all you need is openness. You do not have to force fulfillment. Stop locking it outside with the sentence, I cannot be this until that happens. Remove the sentence. Leave the doorway open, then sleep. There is no need to stand at the doorway all night waiting to see whether something enters. An open door remains open without a guard. This is where the final descent begins. No more explanation is needed. There may be things you do not understand. Let them remain misunderstood. There may be desires whose path you cannot imagine. Let the path remain unseen. There may be questions you cannot answer. Let the questions remain unanswered. You are not required to finish life before you sleep. You are only asked to release the old claim that incompletion outside requires incompletion inside. Perhaps your wish is still physically ahead of you. Then let it be ahead in time, without being outside your identity. Perhaps circumstances still speak the old language tonight. They may. You do not have to argue with them. A foreign language can be heard without becoming your own. Let appearances speak. You know the inward tongue you are learning. Fulfillment, belonging, support, dignity, freedom, peace, capability, and perhaps beyond all of these words, simply being. I am. I am not the condition. I am not the delay. I am not the unanswered question. I am not the old role merely because I wore it yesterday. I am. And from that openness, another state has been accepted. No need to name it again. You know it. Let the name fade. The state may remain without language. The body may become heavier now. The head may settle more completely. The hands have nothing to hold. The eyes have nothing to search for behind the darkness. You do not need another image. You do not need another technique. You do not need to correct the last thought you had. Even if the last thought was doubtful, let it pass without ceremony. Do not make doubt important enough to delay sleep. One thought does not have the authority you once gave it. It is a movement. You remain. And if another thought comes, it too may pass. Perhaps the mind tries one last question. What happens next? Nothing you need to answer tonight. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow happens tomorrow. What if I wake and feel unchanged? Then you wake, and when you remember, you choose again. What if the outer world looks the same? Then you meet what is there without giving it your name. What if I forget everything? Then perhaps you have forgotten words and retained the deeper movement. You do not need to remember a lecture in order to remember home. Sometimes the body remembers first. A pause before panic. A breath before the old conclusion. A moment in which you do not check. That may be memory enough. The night is not an examination. No one grades sleep. No one stands beside the bed, counting repetitions. No hidden authority is waiting to punish you because you drifted from the desired scene. Let all superstition leave the room. There is only consciousness, and the state it accepts. There is only the old habit, and the possibility of another habit. There is only identity, gradually learning where it prefers to rest. And rest is allowed now. You have carried desire far enough for one day. Put it down. You have carried the question of fulfillment far enough. Put it down. You have carried the image of the future far enough. Put it down. You have carried yourself as a project far enough. Put that down too. You are not required to improve another thing before sleeping. The day has made its demands. The night does not need to imitate the day. Night may receive what daylight could not solve, not because darkness is magical, but because you finally stop interfering. The tightened hand opens, the searching eye closes, the questioning voice grows faint, and the state is allowed to exist without being watched. Imagine, if you like, that you have returned once more to that quiet house from the beginning. But now there is no need to stand in the room studying whether it truly belongs to you. You have lived there long enough tonight. The lamps can be extinguished. One room grows dark, then another. Nothing is lost because the light goes out. The house remains. You walk down a quiet hallway without examining the walls. You know where you are. You do not need to see clearly in a familiar home. Perhaps this is what natural assumption feels like. You no longer need light everywhere. You know. One lamp remains somewhere behind you. Then that too may go dark. The house becomes silent. Outside, the road is invisible. You do not need it. You are not traveling tonight. You are home. The key is somewhere you no longer need to remember. The door does not need to be checked. The windows do not need to be watched. Nothing is approaching that requires your attention. Nothing is leaving that you must chase. There is only rest. Perhaps you once believed living as if meant walking around all day imagining the house. No. The resident forgets the house because he lives in it. Perhaps you thought you had to think continually of fulfillment. No. The one fulfilled is free to think of life. Perhaps you thought you had to maintain a particular emotion. No. A home remains yours when you are tired, sad, joyful, distracted, or asleep. A state made natural becomes larger than one passing mood. So let yourself become human again. You do not have to be spiritually impressive tonight. You do not have to feel perfect. You do not have to be certain of every principle. You do not have to banish all fear. You do not have to hold the future still. You may simply be someone who has stopped using absence as a name. That is enough. More than enough. The final task is therefore no task. Stop pretending. Stop pretending that the absence is you. Stop pretending that delay knows your identity. Stop pretending that one person's response contains your entire capacity for love. Stop pretending that one number contains your entire capacity for support. Stop pretending that one failure contains your entire capability. Stop pretending that one chapter contains the whole book. You thought living as if meant pretending the wish was fulfilled. Perhaps the deeper deception was the opposite. You had been pretending that appearances possessed the power to define what you were allowed to be. That performance can end. No audience remains. No curtain needs to fall. Simply stop playing the old role when you notice the costume upon you. Return, I am. Then the chosen state, quietly, naturally, until even the words are unnecessary. And now they are becoming unnecessary. There is nothing further I must persuade you of tonight. No final argument, no final proof, no final technique hidden behind the next sentence. You may stop listening whenever sleep wishes to take you. Let my voice move farther away. Let meaning remain only if it wants to remain. You do not need to carry these words into morning. The state does not require a witness. You may disappear into sleep without reporting anything to yourself. The day is complete. The wish does not need to be chased. The road may disappear into the night, and the answer does not require supervision. You no longer need to stand beside the future with a lantern, asking it to explain how it intends to arrive. I no longer wait. Feel no force behind those words. I no longer wait. Not because every event has happened, because waiting is no longer the identity I choose for sleep. I live from fulfillment, not as a performance, as residence. I live from fulfillment, and now even this sentence may become shorter. Fulfillment, then quieter still. Rest. There is nothing to chase, nothing to perform, nothing to inspect, nothing to defend, nothing to prove. No need to convince yourself, no need to convince anyone else, no need to hold the image, no need to watch the road, no need to keep the question alive. You may allow it all to become distant. The day is complete. The wish does not need to be chased. The road may disappear into the night. The answer does not require supervision. I no longer wait. I live from fulfillment. Sleep may come now. And if these words disappear before you consciously hear the end, that too is perfectly well. The night does not need your attention. The wish does not need your vigilance. The state does not need your performance. The body may rest. The mind may wander. The old identity may become indistinct. The future may remain unseen. You may sleep without carrying it. You may sleep without guarding it. You may sleep without proving anything. You may sleep as one who no longer has to stand outside. You may sleep as one who does not ask appearances for permission to be. You may sleep as one who has quietly returned to the simple doorway. I am. And from there, no more effort, no more explanation, no more reaching, only being, only rest, only the quiet state you have allowed to come near enough that you no longer need to stare at it. Let the words fade. Let even the idea of fulfillment fade. What is natural does not need constant attention. The house is dark. The road is silent. The train is somewhere beyond hearing. The clock is no longer important. The letter does not need to be opened tonight. The question does not need an answer. Everything may wait outside consciousness, while consciousness itself rests. You are not waiting. You are resting. There is a difference. One watches the future. The other belongs to the present state. Rest now. Nothing has to happen before you are allowed to close your eyes completely. Nothing has to change before this breath can finish peacefully. Nothing has to prove the state before the state can be yours inwardly. The final word is not effort. The final word is not desire. The final word is not waiting. It is rest. And from rest, the old story may become very far away. Perhaps tomorrow it returns for a moment. Then you will remember. Not every detail. Only the doorway. Only the difference between looking toward and looking from. Only the knowledge that an absence can be a circumstance without becoming a name. That will be enough. For now, you do not need tomorrow. You do not need another lesson. You do not need another thought. Sleep may come now. And remember, if nothing else remains when morning arrives, this one thing. You were never asked to spend your life pretending that the wish was fulfilled. You were asked to stop pretending that its absence had the power to tell you who you are.